Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jared Bridegan. Jared Bridegan was born in 1989 in Florida, to a modest family. He was the second of two sons, and he was very close to his older brother, Adam. His family was heavily involved with the Church of Jesus Christ of Saints. As Jared entered his teenage years, he met a girl named Mallory Bowden through the church. The two began a date relationship, with she considering Jared her first true love. However, their religious community discouraged living together before marriage, which caused Jared and Mallory to eventually separate. This occurred after Jared graduated from a high school in Florida in 2007. Then, he decided to pursue further education in another state. Jared moved to Utah for college, where he would meet his future first wife at a friend's birthday party. In 2009, Jared, then 20 years old, met Shauna Gardner, 22 years old, from a wealthy family. Shauna was a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. She was born in 1987 to parents Sterling and Shelley Gardner, who co-founded Stampin' Up!, a major company that produces and sells craft items. By 2010, the family business, based in Salt Lake City, generated an annual revenue of $100 million. She has a sister named Sarah, who holds a managerial position in the family business. Growing up in a wealthy family, Shauna enjoyed luxury and a life of leisure. She didn't work as a chef, despite being trained in that profession. People described her as enthusiastic but also a bit indecisive. Initially, Jared wasn't overly interested in her. However, Shauna made an effort to draw him in with her lavish lifestyle, suggesting they could travel the world and do as they pleased, thanks to her parents' financial support. The couple's relationship moved quickly. Just a few months after meeting, they got engaged. By early 2010, they had married in a lavish temple ceremony in Salt Lake City, Utah, the Shauna family covering all expenses. Their decision to marry quickly was influenced by their strong religious beliefs. After getting married, Shauna and Jared moved to Utah, where they bought a comfortable home, valued at around $1 million, with the help of the bride's parents. Each of them owned a Mercedes, despite Jared still being in school and Shauna not having a job. They took many luxurious trips around the world and often posted about their adventures, expensive buys, and hobbies on social media. Friends close to they said that Shauna's parents gave them about $10,000 each month for expenses and also let them use their accounts freely. Jared received a generous gift of $100,000 from his in-laws after completing his degree, which he used to start his own business. The following year, 2013, they welcomed a set of twins, a daughter named Abigail and a son named Liam. Initially, the family resided in Connecticut, but they soon relocated after Liam was diagnosed with a heart condition and lung issues. The move was recommended by doctors, who advised that a coastal location would be beneficial for Liam's health. The Jared family consequently settled in Florida, purchasing a comfortable two-story home near the coastline in Ponte Vedra Beach, south of Jacksonville. During this time, Shauna managed her social media blog, where she presented herself as a loving wife and caring mother. Jared and Shauna were a couple who took fitness seriously, often visiting the gym together. Noticing his wife's dedication, Jared decided to surprise her by hiring a personal trainer. However, soon after they relocated, the couple faced significant marital issues. Even so, they still choose to save face and pretend that everything is fine. Shauna's feelings about their religion began to shift. She lost interest and nearly stopped attending church services, while Jared still stands his ground. This difference in faith and devotion caused ongoing tension and arguments. Furthermore, Shauna's perception of Jared had also changed. She felt he had become lazy, gained weight, and lacked focus on starting his business. Jared completed online courses in programming and design. He then got a job at Microsoft, which helped him gain financial independence. Over time, he advanced to a senior manager position. However, his relationship with his wife began to deteriorate, and frequent arguments became a common occurrence in their home. The situation worsened when Jared discovered intimate conversations between his wife and her fitness trainer, causing him to suspect they were having an affair with each other. Although his wife denied this, the coach confirmed Jared's suspicions via phone call. Jared then contacted his friend, Meller Bowden, via email, lamenting that his wife had become distant from him and increasingly attached to her fitness trainer. Despite this, he expressed his desire to forgive her and work through their issues for the sake of their children. Unfortunately, their efforts to repair the relationship were unsuccessful. In 2015, after nearly 6 years of marriage, the couple began a contentious divorce, battling over shared assets and child custody. Jared publicly accused Shauna of being unfaithful, which she vehemently denied, claiming instead that the marriage had lost its love. In turn, she accused Jared of being cruel and behaving offensively. A dispute between Shauna and Jared led to disagreements over the division of assets and custody of their twin children. Shauna claimed that most of their possessions, including their home, cars, and bank account funds, were gifts or purchased by her parents. She believed Jared had no claim to these items because he had only recently started working after spending years on his education. Jared countered that he was entitled to at least half of their Florida home, citing his contributions over the years. Shauna and Jared also had intense disputes about the custody of their twins. Shauna accused Jared of manipulating the children against her when he was with them, coaching them on what to say about she and recording their statements to use as evidence in court. In response, Jared accused she of snooping on his private life by installing hidden cameras in their home, tapping his phone calls, and tracking his movements. Shauna sought sole custody of the children and sole ownership of their seaside home. She also accused Jared of attempting to withdraw from the children's trust funds for his own use. He retaliated by accusing of tax evasion and claiming that she received thousands of dollars in income working at the family company without paying taxes. By the end of 2015, the court had awarded Jared and Shauna joint custody of their children, but this decision did not bring an end to their disputes. Despite their divorce being finalized, they continued to engage in lengthy court battles for nearly 7 more years, leading to a tragic outcome. During this time, both Jared and Shauna had new families and having more children. Jared met Christina, a fellow Microsoft employee from North Carolina, in 2016. At first, they were just friends, but eventually developed into a dating relationship. A few months later, Christina relocated to Florida to be with Jared. In the fall of 2017, Jared and Christina got married. In February 2019, they had a daughter named Bexley. They then had a son named London in August 2021. Around the same time, Shauna also married again in 2018 to a man named Mario Fernandez who owned a real estate business. Mario was a year her junior. In 2018, Shauna and Mario had a son named Michael. They later moved into the house where Shauna used to live with her ex-husband, Jared. Jared and Shauna's ongoing conflict continued despite both having started new families. They still filed lawsuits against each other, making new demands. One major point of contention was Jared's insistence that if Shauna was not present, her new husband Mario should not be allowed to be with their twins, Abigail and Liam. Simultaneously, he also seeking greater involvement for his new wife Christina in raising Abigail and Liam. On the other hand, Shauna alleged that Jared was trying to humiliate her by not allowing her to use the larger, safer family vehicle to transport the children. Their last court meeting, which took place 4 months before Jared's death, was exceptionally tense. Both parties leveled new accusations, and their property rights continued to be a point of dispute. Following their divorce, a court ruling granted Shauna exclusive use of the larger vehicle and required Jared to pay her $600 in compensation. Jared would pick up Abigail and Liam every Wednesday to spend time together. They would meet for dinner, with their younger sister Bexley occasionally joining them. On Wednesday, February 22, 2022, Jared followed their routine. He picked up Abigail and Liam, took them to a coastal cafe for dinner, and then they went for a walk. After that, he took his two children to Shauna's house and headed home via his usual route, which took about 40 minutes. Part of this route included a deserted and poorly lit stretch of road. As Jared drove slowly in the dark, aware that his 3-year-old daughter, Bexley, was asleep in her car seat, he suddenly spotted a tire in his lane. It was around 9 p.m. Jared stopped the car, turned on his hazard lights, and got out to move the tire to the side of the road. Then several shots rang out. Jared didn't have time to react, because the shooter acted with precision, firing multiple bullets at close range and later fleeing the scene. Bexley was not injured or harmed in this incident. A passerby witnessed the aftermath of the shooting and cautiously approached Jared's body, which was lying in a pool of blood. The passerby immediately called for police and paramedics, but unfortunately, they arrived too late to save Jared. The investigation began with a suspicious timeline. Just before the incident, Jared had called his wife, Christina, to let her know he was on his way home. However, when Jared didn't arrive after an hour, Christina tried calling him again, this time reaching a police officer who informed her of the incident and asked her to report to the Jacksonville Beach Police Station. The police investigation at the scene revealed that Jared's car had stopped due to a tire on the road. They concluded that Jared had exited his vehicle to remove the obstacle, at which point he was shot. Fortunately, Bexley, who was asleep in the back seat, was unharmed, suggesting that she was not the target of the shooter. The fact that Jared's wallet, phone, and tablet were still in the vehicle, with no valuables missing, led investigators to quickly rule out robbery as a motive. Christina was asked if her husband had any known enemies or recent conflicts. She said she didn't know of anyone who wanted to harm him, except possibly his first wife, Shauna. However, she didn't want to make any direct accusations without solid proof. The police couldn't find any surveillance footage of the incident because there were no cameras in the area where it happened. A witness did hear the shots. Then they did hear a vehicle speeding away, and they couldn't see anything in the dark. Christina suggested that Shauna was involved in the crime, a theory that seemed possible to investigators. However, investigators suspect Shauna had an accomplice, as she had an alibi at the time of the crime. She was at home with Mario, Abigail, and Liam, Michael, and visiting parents at the time of the incident. To gather more evidence, the police reviewed nearby surveillance footage. To further investigate, detectives checked the footage from nearby surveillance cameras. The footage showed a dark blue Ford F-150 with brown trim entering the area about 15 minutes before the incident occurred. The same vehicle was seen again on camera a few minutes after the witness reported hearing shots. Jared's family made public appeals asking anyone with information, no matter how small, about the case to come forward. The police arrested Shauna and her current husband, Mario, as their first suspects. Despite multiple questioning sessions, they both denied any involvement in the murder. Shauna acknowledged that her relationship with Jared was complicated, but insisted she would never harm him. In an emotional interview, Shauna shared how Abigail and Liam reacted to the news of Jared's death. Abigail cried uncontrollably for hours, while Liam was in shock and remained silent for a long time. A notable absence at Jared's funeral was that of his ex-wife Shauna and older children, Abigail and Liam. When Christina told Shauna that didn't want her at the ceremony, Shauna responded that if she couldn't attend, neither would their children. Almost a year after the murder, in January 2023, the first suspect was finally arrested. Before that, the police have remained silent on the progress of the investigation, only admitting that a lot of time and resources are needed. A new clue has been found when a dark blue Ford F-150, possibly related to the case, caused an accident and then fled in a crowded area. Fortunately, numerous cameras in the vicinity captured footage, allowing authorities to quickly identify the suspect. The vehicle was owned by 62-year-old Henry Tenen, an unemployed man with a history of convictions. Henry was subsequently charged with multiple offenses, including second-degree premeditated murder using a firearm, participating in a conspiracy to commit murder, and setting up an ambush to obstruct the victim. Jacksonville Beach Police Chief Jonathan Paul Smith and City Prosecutor Melissa Nelson held a press conference to announce the charges against Henry. During the conference, it was revealed that Henry was not the only one involved. In exchange for a lighter sentence, he had agreed to testify against his accomplices. However, their names were not disclosed to protect the integrity of the ongoing investigation. As the investigation continued, it was discovered that Henry with his friend had been living in a rental house owned by Mario. The police questioned Henry's housemate, but he did not have any valuable information about the case. Although he lived with Henry, the housemate had no personal relationship with the owner, Mario, only paying rent through a middleman, Henry. A thorough search of the house led to a significant discovery: a hidden pistol in Henry's room. Ballistic tests later confirmed that this pistol was the murder weapon, further implicating Henry in the crime. Mario Fernandez was arrested on March 16, 2023, after his accomplice, Henry, pleaded guilty and agreed to testify against him. Mario was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and incitement to commit a serious crime. Rumors soon emerged that Shauna was the mastermind behind the murder. These allegations were supported by two key witnesses: her former lover, a fitness trainer, and a tattoo artist she regularly visited. The fitness trainer revealed that Shauna said that she really hates her ex-husband, Jared, and had wished for his death. The tattoo artist shared a similar account, stating that Shauna had complained about the ongoing legal battles with Jared and had inquired about potential ways to silence him permanently. Shauna initially made the inquiry in a joking manner, but she repeated it months later, showing her serious intent. Despite denying all allegations and initially stating her to cooperate with the investigation, but Shauna moved to Washington with her children a few months after Mario's arrest. On August 17, 2023, Shauna was arrested in her Washington apartment and was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and incitement to commit a serious crime. She was extradited to Florida to stand trial alongside Mario and the other suspects. It is believed that Shauna's motives stem from her complicated relationship with Jared, as well as the desire to avoid sharing custody of their two children and the desire to have complete control over shared assets. The case is ongoing and charges are being pursued against everyone involved. Henry, an individual associated with the case, has pleaded guilty and is cooperating with the investigation in hopes of receiving a lighter sentence. Even so, he faces a minimum sentence of 15 years in prison, which would be life-altering given his advanced age. Mario Fernandez, Shauna's husband and a co-conspirator, has partially admitted his guilt, but refusing to testify against his wife. In contrast, Shauna denies all charges. However, prosecutors are asking for the death penalty or life imprisonment without parole for both Shauna Gardner and Mario Fernandez Saldana. Meanwhile, their three children are in the care of their maternal grandparents, Starling and Shelley Gardner, and their aunt, Sarah. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Born on July 16, 1982, Katrina is the youngest of Vicky's three children. She has two siblings, an older brother named Chad and a younger sister named Miranda. Katrina's parents separated when she was young, and she lived with her mother in Mason, Illinois, a suburb outside the city. Katrina is a kind, cheerful person who brings joy to those around her. She especially loves the holiday season and enjoys giving humorous gifts to friends and family. Katrina is a devoted church member, always willing to help those in need. Katrina was content with her life, and in her 20s, she met Todd Smith at a bar. Todd was not only charming but also successful. As a financial planner, he was able to run his own business from home. They found that they had a lot in common and their relationship blossomed. One thing that helped their relationship grow was Todd's flexible work schedule, which allowed them to travel extensively together. After 3 years of dating, Todd proposed to Katrina, and she happily accepted. The couple began planning their wedding, deciding to have an intimate ceremony at a local park. Katrina was thrilled at the prospect of their future together, especially since she had fallen in love with Todd's 3 daughters and was excited to be a part of their lives. Katrina's family, including her mother Vicky and siblings Chad and Miranda, found him to be trustworthy and personable. They believed that he would take good care of Katrina. After their marriage, Katrina and Todd began living together in Masney. On October 20th, 2012, Katrina called her mother to say that she was house-sitting for a friend. During the conversation, Katrina mentioned that she would be coming to dinner on October 24th and that she had something to share with Vicky, leaving her mother wondering what it could be. Before the conversation ended, Vicky promised to make Katrina's favorite meal: chicken and dumplings, a promise she never kept. On October 23rd, Todd Smith called 911, reporting that his wife Katrina had disappeared. He had been trying to reach her for hours without success. He told police that she was house-sitting for a friend and that the house was empty when he arrived. When Katrina's sister and brother, Miranda and Chad, learned of her disappearance, they were worried. Chad, who was training with the U.S. Army in Oklahoma, immediately flew to Illinois to help find his sister. That night, a resident called police about an abandoned car near Rock River. After investigating, the police determined that the car belonged to Katrina. They could not find any signs of a fight or anything else that would indicate that she was missing. Vicky's worst fears were confirmed when she learned that Katrina's daughter's car had been found abandoned in a ditch on the side of the road in an unfamiliar area. The situation seemed ominous and Vicky could not shake the feeling that something terrible had happened to Katrina. If Katrina's car was in that area, then someone must have taken her and left the car there. After the discovery of the car, Katrina's case was officially declared a missing persons case and search efforts were intensified. At 11 p.m. on October 12th, Todd was taken to the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department for questioning. During the interview, Todd told police that he last saw his wife, Katrina, on October 22nd. According to Todd, Katrina had come to their home for a short time to do laundry in preparation for a job interview the following day. While doing laundry, she went to the mall to buy groceries and returned home at 8:30 p.m. After returning home, she left again, as she was house-sitting for a friend, as she told Todd. After Katrina was reported missing, her husband Todd made a heartfelt public appeal, pleading for her safe return. Todd broke down in tears, begging anyone with information about Katrina's disappearance to come forward. Speaking to the media, he urged the public to share any information they had about her whereabouts. As the search for Katrina continued, police and volunteers formed search teams to comb the area. They focused their efforts near the park where Katrina's abandoned car was found, hoping to uncover evidence or clues. Upon arriving in Illinois after military training in Oklahoma, Katrina's brother Chad met a group of people at the park who were eager to help find Katrina. To facilitate the search effort, Chad used his military training to lead the volunteers. He carefully mapped the area, divided the volunteers into teams, and coordinated a thorough investigation. As part of this effort, police used trained dogs to join the search. Katrina's mother, Vicky, created missing person flyers and distributed them throughout town, placing them at gas stations, convenience stores, and lamp posts to notify as many people as possible of her daughter's disappearance. Despite her efforts, Vicky's emotional state due to grief and fear made it difficult for her to participate in the search. Chad, who had supported Todd throughout this time, encouraged him to focus on finding Katrina, reminding him that they needed to stay strong. Later, a police officer discovered several items near Katrina's abandoned car. These items included a wallet, a cell phone, and a towel that appeared to have been used to wipe up blood. It was clear that someone had thrown these items away when they left the car. At that point, the police suspected that something terrible had happened. The items discovered have been sent to the crime lab for further analysis, and police are anxiously awaiting the test results to shed further light on the investigation. During the investigation into Katrina's disappearance, police investigated her personal life for clues. They wanted to understand every aspect of her life by looking into her relationships, daily routine, and any potential involvement in activities such as gambling or drug use. To gather information, police interviewed Katrina's friends and family members. They all described Katrina as a kind and responsible person. Katrina's family and friends described her as a dedicated and hardworking person. They claimed that she never showed any signs of addiction or irresponsible behavior. Instead, they described her as a devoted wife and a woman of integrity. During the investigation into Katrina's disappearance, a local woman came forward with a useful piece of information. She claimed to have seen a blue car matching Katrina's parked on a bridge over the Rock River on the night she disappeared. The trunk was open, and someone was kneeling behind it, but the woman could not tell the person's gender or race, preventing her from providing further details. Police had to investigate possible motives and consider whether anyone, including those close to Katrina, wanted to harm her. Despite claims of a happy marriage, Todd became a target of interest, as police know that even seemingly happy relationships can harbor hidden conflicts or secrets. 3 days after searching for Katrina, police examined her cell phone at the crime lab and found vital information. The phone provided a wealth of data, including text messages, incoming and outgoing calls, photos, videos, and her GPS location. This information allowed police to reconstruct a clear picture of Katrina's activities. Notably, they discovered that she was having an affair with a coworker named Guy Gabriel. The relationship began when they met after work one evening. Initially getting along well, it eventually developed into a romantic relationship. A police background check on Guy revealed a troubled past. It revealed a history of domestic violence, and the police suspected him of being involved in Katrina's disappearance. Furthermore, the police discovered text messages sent by Guy to Katrina, pressuring her to leave her husband Todd for him. Guy then became the prime suspect in the case. The police suspected that Guy may have reacted violently after Katrina refused to leave her husband for him. The revelation of Katrina's affair shocked her family and friends, as they believed her marriage to Todd was perfect and happy. No one suspected that Katrina had been having an affair behind Todd's back. When Todd discovered the affair through the police investigation, he was devastated. The news of his wife's affair hit him hard, taking him completely by surprise. Guy was interviewed by police about Katrina's disappearance. During the interview, Guy appeared nervous and admitted to his affair with Katrina, but denied any involvement in her disappearance. He claimed to have been at work the night Katrina went missing. Further investigation uncovered a previous incident that occurred 2 weeks before Katrina went missing. It was reported that during lunchtime at the auto shop where Katrina and Guy worked, a black Volkswagen Jetta drove through the parking lot with the sunroof open. The driver, who was wearing a mask, handed out flyers through the sunroof. When employees read the flyers, they found a derogatory statement about Katrina and Guy's relationship. The car quickly sped away, leaving people wondering who the mysterious driver was. Police interviewed Katrina's hairdresser, who shared that Katrina felt threatened and wanted to buy a gun for self-defense. Katrina told her hairdresser that she suspected someone was following her. Police searched Katrina's car at the police garage for evidence. Using a chemical called luminol, which glows when it comes into contact with blood, they found a significant amount of blood in the trunk. On November 9th, 17 days after a firefighter in Rock River discovered a body, and the fire department was called to assist in recovering the body and pulling it from the water. After it was pulled from the water, it was determined that the body was that of a woman. However, because the body was so badly decomposed, identification was difficult. It was unclear whether the body was Katrina's. The body was then taken to the medical examiner's office, where an autopsy was performed to determine the cause of death. To confirm the identity, dental records were sent to a county specialist for analysis. The expert then compared the dental features of the body with those in Katrina's records, confirming that the body was Katrina. Katrina's autopsy revealed that her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. When her family learned that her body had been discovered, they were devastated. The heartbreaking news left them reeling, and it was difficult to accept the full extent of what had happened. Katrina's mother, Vicky, found the news difficult to accept, and the thought of her daughter suffering such a violent end was almost unbearable. Although Guy Gabriel is no longer a suspect, police have sought his perspective on who may have harmed Katrina. Guy reveals that Katrina had mentioned divorce. He believes that Todd's controlling nature may have escalated and led to the tragedy. As police dig deeper into Katrina and Todd's marriage, some disturbing facts come to light. Katrina had told several people that she wanted a divorce from Todd. In addition, police discovered that Katrina had met with a divorce attorney just one day before her disappearance. Contrary to what Katrina claimed, she was not house-sitting at a friend's apartment, but had actually moved out after her split from Todd. Based on the information gathered and interviews conducted, police began to suspect that Todd was behind the mysterious incident at Katrina's workplace. Suspicions were heightened when police discovered that Todd had recently driven a car matching the make and color of the one involved in Katrina's murder, a black VW Jetta. Todd was believed to have been test driving the car at the time of the murder. When police told Katrina's family that Todd was the prime suspect in her case, and that he had been arrested, they were shocked and in disbelief. The family had loved and respected Todd as a member of the family, and the news was devastating. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was devastated by the news. The thought that her son-in-law could commit such a heinous crime made her sick. She had always trusted Todd and could not imagine that he would commit such a terrible act. The possibility that Todd was responsible for her daughter's murder never crossed her mind. The police discovered that Todd's investment company was in legal trouble and he was no longer working. As a result, Katrina was the family's sole source of income. Based on this information, the police suspected that if Katrina left Todd, she would take the money with her. This possibility may have motivated Todd to consider killing his wife as a way to gain control of the family's finances. Police obtained a search warrant for Todd and Katrina's home to collect evidence. During the search, they found a baseball bat in the garage that had blood on it, leading police to suspect that it could be the murder weapon. The injuries on Katrina's body supported this theory, as they were consistent with blunt force trauma. To confirm their suspicions, a DNA test was conducted on the bat. The results showed that the blood on the bat belonged to Katrina. Furthermore, police discovered a large, unusually clean area under the car. Upon examination, they discovered that the blood left under the car matched Katrina's DNA profile. 30 days after Katrina's murder, her husband Todd was arrested and charged in connection with her death. Todd's trial began on January 11, 2017. During the trial, the prosecution presented its case against Todd, replaying the events of the night Katrina died. Key evidence included a recent meeting between Katrina and a divorce attorney to discuss her marital problems. The prosecution argued that Katrina's decision to divorce indicated that their relationship was in trouble. According to the prosecution, Katrina had visited Todd's home that day to do laundry in preparation for a job interview the next morning. During the visit, the prosecution claimed that Katrina had made it clear to Todd that she wanted to end their marriage. They argued that this caused Todd to become aggressive and attack Katrina. The prosecution alleged that while Katrina was in the garage, Todd became angry and picked up a baseball bat, beating her to death. After Katrina died, Todd allegedly moved her body into the trunk of her car. Todd then drove Katrina's body to a remote area called Rock River, where he disposed of the body by throwing it off a nearby bridge. After dumping her body, Todd parked his car on the side of the road and walked home. Once home, he cleaned up any evidence of his crime by disposing of Katrina's cell phone and the bloody towels he used to mop the garage floor. Todd Smith was found guilty by a jury and sentenced to 55 years in prison. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Annie Lee. Annie Lee was born on July 3, 1985, in San Jose, California, to Vivian Van Lee and Hogan Lee, Vietnamese immigrants. As an only child, Annie demonstrated exceptional intelligence and talent from an early age, consistently excelling in her studies and being considered the top student in her school. Annie's favorite subjects were chemistry and biology. Her teachers believed she had a bright future in science, with some even predicting she might one day win a Nobel Prize. Throughout her school years, Annie actively participated in scientific conferences, where her work garnered various awards and recognition. As a high school student, she secured a $65,000 scholarship to study at any U.S. university. Annie chose the University of Rochester in New York, where she studied cellular development biology and medical anthropology. She later enrolled in Yale University's graduate school, working in a scientific laboratory and pursuing a doctoral degree in chemistry and biology. Annie's dissertation focused on the study of diseases caused by metabolic disorders. During her time working in the laboratory, she gained much research knowledge, which contributed to the treatment of diabetes and certain types of cancer. Annie, a student at the University of Rochester in New York, while pursuing her studies, met Jonathan Widowski, a fellow student and promising scientist. The two quickly dating, and their parents were pleased with their relationship. After graduating, Annie moved to New Haven, Connecticut, to attend Yale, while Jonathan chose to pursue his studies at Columbia University in New York. Despite the distance, the couple maintained their romance, visiting each other every weekend and making plans for their future. In the summer of 2009, Jonathan proposed to Annie with a beautiful diamond ring, and she happily accepted. They set their wedding date for Sunday, September 13, 2009. Initially, they only shared the news with their parents and close friends, keeping their colleagues in the dark. It wasn't until a week before the wedding, on September 6, that Annie sent out emails to friends and colleagues, announcing their upcoming marriage and a wedding invitation. The day after, the news spread rapidly throughout the department and the lab where Annie worked, becoming the most discussed topic. Annie and her fiancé had planned a wedding ceremony on Long Island, followed by a honeymoon at a luxurious resort in Greece. A few months before she went missing, Annie had written an article for the university publication, where she cautioned students about potential dangers and provided safety tips for when they were off campus. However, despite being aware of the risks, Annie herself fell victim to an unexpected tragedy at her workplace. On Tuesday, September 8, Annie left her university dormitory, where she shared a room with 3 friends, and headed to the University Medical Center laboratory, where she worked. The laboratory building, located on Amistad Street, has restricted access and requires a pass and special key card for entry and movement within the premises. A CCTV camera at the entrance captured Annie entering the building around 10 o'clock that morning. She went to her office, changed her clothes, stored her personal belongings, put on a medical coat, locked the door, and proceeded to the biolab. However, Annie never returned to her office that day and seemed to vanish in the corridors. Unfortunately, no one ever saw her alive again. On the evening Annie went missing, her dormitory neighbors were the first to discover the incident. They had grown accustomed to Annie's punctual nature, as she usually returned home at the same time every day. However, as midnight approached and she failed to return, her friends began to worry. Their concerns deepened when they were unable to reach Annie on her phone. Deciding to take action, they reported her disappearance to the police. Upon investigation, it was discovered that Annie's parents and fiancé had also been unable to contact her that night. Initially, they had assumed she was working late due to her heavy workload and would call them back when she was available. When the police arrived, they weren't too worried. They had heard what had happened and assumed that Annie was nervous before the wedding and needed time to calm down. However, their opinion quickly changed after examining Annie's office and reviewing the CCTV footage. They also tracked her movements within the building using her key card. The evidence revealed that Annie had entered the building in the morning but never exited. Her personal belongings, including her clothes, bag, wallet, and cell phone, were still in her office. Despite an extensive search, no sign of Annie was found, leaving behind only the unsettling feeling that she had vanished into thin. The disappearance of Annie Lee, a graduate student, led to an extensive investigation by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Those who knew Annie personally described her as intelligent, kind, cheerful, and energetic, with no known enemies. Her family and fiancé anxiously waited for news, hoped she will return safely. However, detectives were less optimistic, concluding that it was likely she was no longer alive. The laboratory building, crime scene, was placed under guard, and the list of suspects was narrowed down to staff and students with authorized access. The university atmosphere was tense because everyone realized that the killer might be somewhere nearby. Annie's fiancé, Jonathan, who had flown in from another state, was questioned but had a solid alibi. Despite this, he was visibly shaken and on the verge of a nervous breakdown, deeply concerned about Annie's disappearance. Among the suspects, one is Annie's teacher. On the day she disappeared, he canceled his lectures for unknown reasons and had no alibi. Although his was initially questioned, after the police still believed the perpetrator was likely someone from Yale University's laboratory, either a student, faculty member, or staff. A disturbing detect was found on September 12, providing the first evidence that Annie was no longer alive. A medical coat stained with blood was discovered hidden behind a false ceiling in an auxiliary room of a building. The coat did not belong to Annie, but further examination revealed that the blood on it was indeed hers. On September 13, the body Annie was found in a narrow pipeline on the technical floor of the laboratory. The day she was supposed to get married and leave for her honeymoon in Greece. Her petite stature and fragile build made it easier for her killer to stuff her body into the small space. A service dog's keen sense of smell helped the police locate Annie's body. The location where her body was hidden suggested that the killer was familiar with the laboratory's layout. It was a spot that was hard to access, making it a clever yet sinister choice for concealing the crime. Annie's body showed severe signs of trauma. Most of her ribs were broken, her limbs were damaged, and several teeth were knocked out. However, according to the pathologists, the cause of death was mechanical asphyxia, which meant that Annie was severely beaten and then strangled. A further examination revealed that Annie's clothes had traces of seminal fluid. But it was concluded that she had not been raped. A few days before Annie's body was discovered, police attention was initially drawn to Raymond J. Clark III, a young laboratory technician. Raymond claimed to have seen Annie leave the building without her belongings, implying she intended to return. However, his testimony aroused suspicion from the police. Following the discovery of Annie's body, Raymond became the primary suspect. They collected DNA samples from Raymond and asked him not to leave the country until the investigation was completed. On September 17, Raymond was arrested. Forensic examination results showed that his semen was found on Annie's clothes. And his robe, stained with Annie's blood, was discovered hidden in the suspended ceiling. Additionally, Raymond had suspicious bruises on his body, suggesting that Annie had fiercely defended herself before her death. Despite the incriminating evidence, Raymond denied any involvement in the crime. Further investigation showed that Raymond was a very hot-tempered person, easily angered and often had workplace conflicts. He frequently engaged in verbal altercations with colleagues and had a reputation for being cruel, having physically abused women he had relationships with in the past. Raymond did not excel academically, but he stood out as a promising athlete in school. He is known for his handsome looks and has a strong appeal to women. However, he was unable to get into university due to poor grades. Fortunately, with the help of some relatives, Raymond secured a job at a laboratory, starting as a janitor and eventually working his way up to become a technician. During this time, Raymond was in a relationship with a woman named Jessica Del Rocco. However, their relationship was tumultuous, and Jessica later testified against Raymond in court. She described him as controlling, stating that he would constantly monitor her activities, read her messages, and dictate what she could do and couldn't do. He would also become violent when they disagreed. And Jessica claimed that he would physically abuse her. After one particularly brutal incident, Jessica fled from Raymond. She temporarily relocated to another state to escape his abuse. Then Raymond had been in a relationship with Jennifer Radko, a Yale University student, for the past year. Jennifer ignored rumors about his alleged infidelity with students and lab employees. She accepted his marriage proposal, and they proceeding with wedding preparations. The motive behind the murder remains unclear, even after he fully admitted his guilt. He never revealed his motive, even after admitting to the crime. Initially, it was thought that the murder was related to a workplace conflict. Annie was conducting experiments on laboratory mice to study the effectiveness of enzymes in treating cancer, diabetes, and other diseases. Raymond, who considered the laboratory his domain, was in charge of the mice. Two theories emerged about the incident leading to the murder. The first theory suggests that Raymond might have had a conflict with Annie. On the day of the murder, Annie stayed late in the laboratory and entered the area where experimental animals were kept. Raymond, who had cleaned the area, go in there too. The confrontation could have intensified into a physical altercation, which in turn could have led to Annie being strangled by Raymond a fit of rage. A second theory proposes that Raymond had feelings for Annie, but she rejected his advances. Raymond, unaccustomed to rejection, was hurt by her refusal. When he learned about her upcoming wedding on September 7th, Raymond was completely overcome by intense feelings of jealousy. The next day, when he was alone with Annie in the laboratory, he attacked her, beating and attempting to rape her, then ultimately strangling her. This theory explains the appearance of seminal fluid on Annie's clothes. The case gained widespread media attention from the start. The victim was a promising young scientist, and the crime was committed on campus. Raymond first appeared in court in Connecticut on October 6, 2009, where he denied any involvement in the murder and the charges against him. The hearing was postponed multiple times to allow for the collection of all evidence and materials. It was discovered that Raymond had spent at least an hour with Annie in the laboratory, during which the murder took place. In an attempt to mislead investigators, Raymond used his key card over 50 times at various locations, eventually making his way to the technical floor. There, he spent around 15 minutes hiding the body in the wall. Raymond then activated the fire alarm, which forced the staff to evacuate the building, providing him with an opportunity to blend in and avoid suspicion. A crucial piece of evidence was discovered in the pocket of a robe found hidden under a false ceiling, a green ballpoint pen. Further examination revealed that Raymond had used this pen to sign his name in various work logs on the same day. Additionally, witnesses reported seeing Raymond scrubbing specific areas of the lab floor repeatedly over the next few days. Despite the floor appearing clean, he also disposed of the cleaning equipment and a pack of tissues with small brown stains, resembling blood splatters, in a trash can. Forensic analysis later confirmed that the tissues contained Annie's blood, indicating that Raymond had made a thorough attempt to eliminate any evidence. In February 2011, Clark agreed to a plea deal in exchange for a reduced sentence. At the court hearing on March 17, 2011, he pleaded guilty to murder and attempted rape and apologized to Tanny's parents and fiancé. However, Raymond never revealed the details of the incident leading up to the murder or his motivation for the crime. As a result, he was sentenced to 44 years in prison. Raymond is currently serving his sentence at the Cheshire Correctional Institution in New Haven County, Connecticut, and will not be eligible for release until September 2053. The parents and fiancé of Annie have expressed that they find the given sentence to be fair. At the sentencing, Annie's mother delivered a heartfelt speech. With tears in her eyes, she expressed that she would never get the opportunity to hold her daughter again, witness her marriage, hear her laughter, or enjoy the presence of her grandchildren. She said goodbye to her child, whom she cherished as the greatest gift from God. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Joanne Nelson. Joanne Nelson was a cheerful and intelligent young woman who values the happiness of her loved ones over her own. Growing up in Hull, also known as Kingston upon Hull, on the east coast of Yorkshire, England, she lived with her parents. Her mother was a teaching assistant, and her father, Charlie, worked as an engineer for the city council. Joanne has a bubbly personality and excels both academically and socially. She is active in sports, enjoying netball, racquetball, and swimming. Although she is happy, she always dreamed of having her own family. Joanne originally pursued a career in medicine but found the role of a nurse difficult. She considered working abroad but eventually chose to work at a job center in Hull to be closer to family and friends. Joanne enjoys helping people find jobs and improve their skills, finding fulfillment in improving the lives of others. One day Joanne meets Paul. Before meeting Joanne, Paul had been in a number of serious relationships. In 1993, during his college years, he dated Carrie Thompson. Their relationship was short-lived, but Carrie reported Paul's violent behavior to the police. During arguments, he became violent, punching walls and assaulting Carrie. In 1999, Paul met Jenny Mary Clark. They married just 2 weeks after meeting, but their marriage quickly became a nightmare. On their wedding night, Paul attacked Jenny, and the abuse continued. He even choked her until she passed out. Despite these problems, Paul and Jenny decided to have children. Their daughter, Chloe, was born in 2000, and Paul and Jenny divorced shortly thereafter. When Chloe was 5, Jenny met Joanne and immediately recognized the challenges Joanne would face with Paul, as she seemed too naive to deal with such a difficult man. In 2002, Paul ended his relationship with Jenny and began dating Joanne Nelson. Their relationship began on the streets, where Paul worked as a bouncer in bars and clubs. At 27, he was experienced in relationships, while Joanne, 19, was just entering adulthood. Despite the age difference, they found support in each other, both seeking independence from their parents. Initially, they lived with Paul's mother before eventually buying their own home. However, their happiness gradually faded. Their arguments and conflicts increased. For Joanne, everything became too mundane and boring. Their differences began to strain the relationship. For example, she loved to be neat, while Paul was indifferent to it. On February 14, 2005, Joanne did not show up for work, which was unusual and worrying. On Valentine's Day 2005, Joanne Nelson mysteriously went missing. Paul was the one who reported the matter to the police. He claimed that he last saw Joanne when she was sleeping, then he left home and went to work. When he returned home, she had disappeared without a trace. Joanne, then 22, disappeared, leaving her family and friends extremely worried. The situation became even more confusing when she missed the funeral of her best friend's father and did not wish her younger sister Katie a happy 19th birthday. After the police declared Joanne missing, a large-scale search operation was launched, involving many law enforcement officers, the military, and volunteers. Since Joanne's disappearance, Joanne's father has been suspicious of Paul. Meanwhile, Katie finds it hard to believe that Paul is involved in this case because Paul has been actively involved in the search for Joanne. Paul has been working with volunteers and Joanne's family and friends. He also gave interviews to the press without the permission of Joanne's family. In a phone conversation with a reporter, Paul claimed that he had nothing to do with Joanne's disappearance. Paul asserted that his love for Joanne was real and that he could not harm her. However, a facial expression expert, Cliff, analyzed Paul's behavior during a television interview and found several suspicious signs. First, Paul did not close his eyes when talking about Joanne, which is not common for a grieving person. Second, Paul did not try to shed tears when talking about his lover. These unusual behaviors made people question whether Paul's words were truly sincere. Paul, the man who was involved in Joanne's disappearance, was eventually arrested after his mother disclosed information about his actions to the police. When questioned, Paul confessed that he had killed Joanne during an argument on Valentine's Day 2005. He said that the argument stemmed from Joanne constantly criticizing him for not doing his chores, especially when she asked him to help her wash her clothes, which angered him. When Joanne announced her plans to leave and forced him to sell the house, Paul became even angrier. In a fit of rage, Paul killed Joanne with his bare hands. He then remained calm and began to plan how to cover up the crime. He went to his mother's house, took a gardening tool, and chatted with the neighbors. He then went to the store to buy the necessary items for removing the evidence, including bin bags, rubber gloves, and disinfectant spray. The lead investigator discovered fingernail marks on the back of Paul's hand, which indicated that he had participated in the murder. This evidence confirmed Paul's confession and proved that he had committed the murder. Surveillance videos from a store near the scene of the crime showed Paul acting surprisingly calmly. Using the items he had purchased, he bound Joanne's hands and feet, stuffed her in a bag, and secured it with duct tape. He then carried her body to her car in broad daylight. After Paul hid Joanne's body in the car, he went to fill up with petrol in High Halden. He then drove about 75 miles to Bradbury Woodland, a remote forest near Winteringham in North Yorkshire. There, he carried Joanne's body for about 250 yards until he found a suitable place to bury her, among pine trees. He used branches to cover up the small hole where her body was buried. To cover up the crime, before going to work, Paul made a fake phone call to Joanne to deflect suspicion. The next day, he continued his daily life without showing any remorse for his heinous actions. Paul showed a frightening coldness by concealing his crime and continuing his normal life. After his confession, Paul said he did not remember exactly where he buried Joanne. However, he remembered that he buried Joanne in a metal gate and that there were some green bottles nearby. Detective Higgins said this information was very useful for the search. Because of Paul's suggestions, the police were able to start organizing the search by following a route through the woods. The search for Joanne lasted about 6 weeks and involved many people, including units from 3 counties working together on this grueling task. After 39 agonizing days of waiting, a team of detectives led by Ray Higgins finally found the remains of Joanne, 22, in Bransby near York. They followed Paul's description slowly. After walking about a quarter of a mile, they came upon a hole in the woods. Here they found a rubbish bag with what looked like a leg inside. It was Joanne's body wrapped in the bag. Paul, known for his history of sexual violence against women, kept his dark secrets hidden from Joanne's family and the public until the trial. At the time, he claimed to have mental health problems while working as a bouncer at the club. People who knew him from the gym said he often caused trouble at clubs and bars. The family later discovered that Paul had been taking steroids in an attempt to become a bodybuilder. Friends said he had previously been an alcoholic and that his rages may have been steroid-induced. Paul attended Sydney Smith School, then Hull College, where he completed a degree in civil engineering. He went on to study at Bishop Burton College, where he completed a degree in horticulture. Paul lived in Saudi Arabia, working with his father, Peter Dyson, in the maintenance industry. He also gained experience as a gardener and later worked as a mechanic for Pinal. From December 2004, Paul worked at Byam Timber on Somerton Road as a timber cutter until his arrest. At 15, he met Colin Allen, a martial arts expert, and they became friends. Paul confessed to the murder to Colin, leading to his arrest. Friends said he had a distorted view of himself, seeing himself as charming and attractive to women. He often used his job as a security guard to approach girls from higher social classes. On the first day of the trial, November 7, 2005, Paul surprised the entire courtroom by pleading guilty. Joanne's family was completely shocked by the confession, as they had anticipated a long, intense trial. When Paul pleaded guilty, Joanne's family said yes in unison. Afterwards, he simply looked straight ahead or kept his head down, avoiding looking at Joanne's relatives and the police. He showed no emotion on his face, even as the charges were announced. His lawyer, Harry Barl, told the court that there was no excuse for his actions. On November 8, nearly 10 months after the murder, Paul was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 16 years to serve. Surprisingly, in November 2019, after just 14 years, Paul, then 45, was transferred to an open prison and released on day release. The reason was that the parole board found that Paul had actively participated in a self-awareness development program and successfully completed a social improvement program. The easing of Paul's detention conditions and his day release caused deep emotional distress for Joanne's family. Katie, Joanne's sister, expressed to the media that they felt lost and unsure of how to handle the news. Paul's release brought back painful memories of Joanne's death, and the family believed he did not deserve a reduced sentence for his actions. Katie emphasized that Paul's crime was serious and premeditated, making his early release a challenging ordeal for the family. They fear he might return to their city of Hull and commit further harm, as they have been unable to secure a restriction order against him. Although there is no confirmed information about Paul's return to the city, he remains under probation supervision. Any violation of his terms or the law will result in his return to prison. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Laurie K. Soares. Laurie K. Soares was born on December 31, 1976, in Fullerton, California, and spent the first 2 years of her life in a children's orphanage. Her birth parents' identities remain unknown. At the age of 2, Laurie was adopted by Thelma and Geraldo Suarez, a devout couple who met while serving as missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Rio de Janeiro. Geraldo, originally from São Paulo, Brazil, worked as a teacher at Sunny Hills High School. Geraldo, who did not have their own biological children, adopted Lori, and later, they also adopted a boy named Paul. In 1987, Lori's adoptive parents divorced, and she stayed with her mother, Thelma, along with her adopted brother Paul. The family moved to Utah, where Lori and Paul high school and then registered to a local university. Lori grew up into a kind and dynamic young man. Lori was very close to her adopted mother Thelma. At the age of 19, Lori met Mark Douglas Hack. Born in April 1976 in North Carolina, his father, Douglas, was a famous pediatrician, and his mother, Helena, was a nurse. Mark's brother, Scotty and Lance, also pursued a successful career in science. Mark is pursuing a career in medicine, following his family's footsteps. Mark is very thoughtful. Lori loved Mark at first sight. After 5 years of love, Lori and Mark were married. They settled in a small house in Salt Lake City, Utah. At that time, Lori graduated and was an assistant director of a senior at a large company with a good salary. Mark, who has just graduated from the University of Utah with a psychology and attended medical school in North Carolina, where he and his wife will move in the summer of 2004. In June 2004, Lori became pregnant with their first child. The couple was overjoyed and happy. Lori was transferred to the company's North Carolina branch, and Mark, who had graduated from medical school, was expected to work as a physician at a major medical center. On July 19, 2004, Lori disappeared. Mark was worried when Lori did not return home after her normal morning exercise at the local park. Initially, Mark said that Lori drove directly to the office to work. After calling to work and knowing that Lori was absent, Mark immediately called the police and reported the situation. The police listened to Mark's story and explained to him that the missing and adult search would be started after 24 hours of disappearance. Not wanting to wait, Mark was planning to start looking for Lori. Mark walked to the park that Lori jogged that day and saw her car parked at the edge of the neighborhood, but she disappeared. Later, Mark returned home and started calling friends, relatives, and colleagues, trying to determine the last time people saw or talked to Lori. Unfortunately, Lori did not contact anyone. The news of Lori's disappearance has been spread widely. Before the police participated in searching efforts, hundreds of people, including relatives, friends, and strangers heard about the case, began to search for Lori. They also distributed leaflets with photos of Lori. By July 20th, when Lori's disappearance was officially reported, the story has attracted significant attention from the media. A press conference in the city of Salt Lake was held, where Mark called for the help of the public. Mark cried and begged anyone with information about Lori. In the evening, about 1,000 people participated in the search. The police investigation led them to Lori's car, but when checked, they could not find any evidence or clues in the car. However, the police have noticed something unusual, which is the position of the driver's seat. The fact is that Lori is quite small, but the chair is moved back so much that it can fit an adult man, and Lori himself cannot reach the pedal. Mark's home search showed an unexpected discovery: Lori's car keys were indoors. This has raised an important question, because Lori parked a car near the park and did not return home. The appearance of the indoor key immediately showed Mark related to the disappearance of Lori's disappearance. However, Mark explained that when he found the car, the key was still in the car and he took home. Although this new discovery was not enough to arrest Mark, Mark was listed by the police in the list of potential suspects in Lori's disappearance. One day after Lori was reported missing, the police received a report that Mark was seen running naked and not awake on the street, concerned about Mark's mental health. A medical group from a psychiatric clinic was sent to assess his situation, and many believed that the stress of his missing wife made Mark crazy. However, police suspected that Mark could be pretending to lose his mind to avoid responsibility. police asked for a search for Mark and Lori's house. While Mark is being evaluated at the psychiatric department, the police have found worrying evidence. Evidence was discovered in the bedroom. The police found the blood stain was washed in Mark's bedroom, and the bloody bed sheet. At the same time, a completely new spring mattress lying on the bed, the receipt of buying the mattress found in the bedside cabinet. Considered by the date and time on the receipt, the mattress was bought on the morning of July 19th, according to Mark's words. At that time, Mark was going to the park to find his wife. In addition, under the closet, the police found a kitchen knife with dry blood stains. In the living room, police found an envelope. Inside the envelope is a letter written by Lori. In the letter, she made the decision to end their relationship due to Mark's unfaithfulness during the marriage, which made Lori lose faith in Mark. Police concluded that Mark was really related to Lori's disappearance. Douglas Hacking, Mark's father, provided detailed information about the situation. Douglas said that Mark had never graduated from Utah University or became a psychologist granted a certificate. In fact, Mark was kicked out of university 2 years ago, right after getting married to Lori. However, he was afraid people would be disappointed, especially Lori, so Mark continued to deceive them by pretending to go to school, completing his homework and preparing to graduate. Mark said his father knew about a month before the tragedy occurred. Mark's father advised Mark to confess everything with Lori. But Mark continued to lie, saying that he was accepted to a prestigious medical school due to excellent academic achievements in psychology. Lori was still unaware of Mark's lie about his education. Lori and Mark had planned to move to another state to make Mark's schooling more convenient, and Lori had even started changing her job to accommodate Mark's schooling. However, Mark's father, Douglas, revealed everything to Lori, which shocked her. Lori's co-workers noticed that she had been crying for days, but Lori chose to confide in a close friend. The friend suggested that Lori write a letter expressing her pain and anxiety, and the letter was found by police in Mark's home. 6 days after Lori's disappearance, Mark was in a psychiatric hospital when he was visited by his 2 brothers on July 25th. During this visit, Mark unexpectedly confessed to his brothers that he was responsible for Lori's death, saying that he had shot her with a .22 caliber rifle. During a search of the dumpster, police recovered a cut mattress spring with blood and black hair, which police confirmed belonged to Lori. Mark told his 2 brothers that he had dumped Lori's body in the dumpster after packing it. Based on that clue, police worked with hundreds of volunteers to search the city's massive landfill with the help of sniffer dogs. However, due to Mark's unstable mental health, it is possible that his testimony was false. Although police suspect Mark killed his wife, his attorney asserted that this could not be proven until the body was found. However, on August 2nd, Mark was charged with first-degree murder and obstruction of justice, and was transferred to the prison's mental health facility. On August 9th, Lori was officially declared dead, and the search for her body became a top priority for the police. The work continued for 2 months, with searchers shoveling tons of trash from the city's landfill in search of Lori's body. On October 1st, 2004, Lori's remains were discovered at the landfill. That same day, a forensic examination confirmed that they were indeed those of Lori. According to the investigation, police said that since Lori discovered that Mark had lied to her throughout their marriage, he had not graduated and had not applied to medical school as he had said. On July 18th, Lori wrote a letter to Mark expressing her intention to divorce Mark because of his dishonesty. However, instead of agreeing to the divorce, Mark Hacking shot Lori to death while she was sleeping in bed at night. He used a rifle to commit the crime and then tried to cover his tracks, trying to make it appear that Lori had disappeared. Initially, the prosecution intended to seek the death penalty for Mark. However, Mark's unstable mental health led to the sentence being changed to life imprisonment. In April 2005, Mark, faced with overwhelming evidence and after consulting with a lawyer, finally confessed to the murder. However, Mark could not provide a clear motive for his actions. He broke down in tears, saying that Lori was the best thing that had ever happened to him and that he was disillusioned by losing her. According to his account, on the night of the murder, Mark lost control, grabbed a gun and shot Lori while she was sleeping. Mark attributed his mental instability to the pressure from his family to achieve high academic results and excel in all areas. After dropping out of college, he felt ashamed of not meeting other people's expectations. On June 6, 2005, Mark was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, with the opportunity to apply for parole after 2035. All of Mark's appeals and those filed by his attorney were ultimately rejected. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Jennifer Dullos. Jennifer Dullos was born in 1968 in New York. Her father is Hillard Farber, a banker, and her mother is Gloria Tenenberg, a philanthropist. Jennifer has an older sister, Melissa Irene Farber. Jennifer graduated from Brown University in 1990 and later earned a master's degree in creative writing from New York University's Tisch School of the Arts. Jennifer is married to Fotis and they have 5 children together, all named after Greek Orthodox saints, 3 sons, Petros, Theodore, and Constantine, and 2 daughters, Christiane and Cleopatra. Jennifer and Fotis were married for 13 years before ending their marriage in 2017. After that, Jennifer began to feel afraid of her ex-husband. Which makes us wonder, who is Fotis and what changed him? Fotis Dullos was born on August 6, 1967, in Turkey. He grew up in Athens, Greece, and moved to the United States in 1986. He attended Brown University, graduating in 1989. Fotis then went on to earn a master's degree in finance from Columbia Business School. Fotis met his first wife, Hilary Vanessa Alama, at Brown University and married her in Athens in 2000. After their divorce in 2004, he moved to Connecticut and married Jennifer a month later, despite having known her since he was married to Hilary. They moved to Farmington and had 5 children. The marriage of Jennifer and Fotis began to crumble in 2012 and completely collapsed in 2017. Jennifer shared her marital struggles in a blog post in March 2012. She expressed her wish to be stronger to face conflicts without fear. In 2017, Jennifer decided to file for divorce. The reason was that Fotis had an affair with Michelle Troconis, a Venezuelan colleague. Jennifer also requested custody of the 5 children, but the court only granted joint custody. Jennifer feared for her safety and that of her children. She accused Fotis of unsafe behavior, bullying, intimidation, and excessive control. She recounted an incident with Fotis on June 3, 2017. When Fotis learned that she had made plans for the children on Saturday morning, he became angry and lost control. Jennifer said Fotis became angry and agitated, causing her to run upstairs to get away from him. However, Fotis chased her upstairs. Despite Jennifer locking and bolting the door, Fotis continued to verbally and physically abuse and threaten her, leaving her feeling trapped and helpless. Jennifer felt unsafe around her husband. When she decided to file for divorce, the situation became even more dangerous. In an interview, Jennifer shared that she was very afraid of Fotis. She realized that her desire for a divorce had deeply angered Fotis, and she feared that he might retaliate by causing her harm. Jennifer revealed that when she filed for divorce in May 2017, Fotis threatened to kidnap and harm their children if she did not accept his divorce terms. Fotis even purchased a gun that year. In 2018, Jennifer filed for emergency custody of the children. During the trial, the court found that Fotis had violated multiple court orders. Finally, Jennifer was awarded primary custody of the children. Fotis was only allowed supervised visits and phone calls were monitored. Jennifer and the children moved to a rented house in New Canaan, 70 miles from Fotis's home. Fotis was devastated by Jennifer's allegations. In an email to her in 2017, he expressed concern for the children's well-being. He realized that the children needed both parents, not just one. Fotis pleaded with Jennifer to reconsider their marriage for the sake of the children. He even suggested that they could live as partners and learn to accept each other. While denying Jennifer's allegations, Fotis counterclaimed that she had turned the children against him. He claimed that Jennifer called him a psychopath and told the children that he did not care about them. Fotis also claimed that Jennifer bragged about dragging out the divorce for 2 years so she could hire the mafia to break his legs. Fotis denied threatening to kidnap his child and explained that he bought the gun to protect his home. However, Fotis's argument not be credible given the events that followed. Jennifer was last seen at around 8:05 a.m. on May 24, 2019, after dropping her child off at school in New Canaan. She had 2 doctor's appointments in New York at 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. When Jennifer failed to show up for these appointments, which she never missed, her friends reported her missing to the police. Lauren Almeida, Jennifer's live-in nanny, also noticed something unusual. When she arrived at Jennifer's apartment at 11:30 a.m., she found the Range Rover in the garage, while Jennifer's Chevrolet Suburban was missing. However, Lauren did not notify the police until 7 p.m. Jennifer's prolonged and unusual absence, along with her failure to notify anyone of her departure, raised serious concerns for her safety. After receiving disturbing reports, the police investigated and searched Jennifer's New Canaan home. The results of the search shocked everyone who cared about Jennifer. They found blood stains in the garage, on the walls, on the doors, and on the outside of the Range Rover. Inside the home, there were scattered blood stains in the kitchen, and most notably, blood from both Jennifer and her husband, Fotis. This discovery raised suspicions that Fotis may have murdered his wife. The police investigation found that Fotis was present at Jennifer's home on the day she went missing. Police found bicycle tracks around the house, indicating that Fotis had arrived there on a bicycle. According to the police theory, Fotis stalked and waited for Jennifer to return from dropping off her children at school. He then brutally murdered her, cleaned up the scene, and destroyed the evidence. A neighbor's security camera recorded a Chevrolet Suburban leaving Jennifer's home at 10:25 a.m. Police believe Fotis was the driver of the vehicle. Police alleged that Fotis hid Jennifer's body along with items used to clean up the crime scene in his vehicle. He then abandoned the vehicle about 3 miles from the town of New Canaan. Based on these suspicious actions, police believe Fotis was the perpetrator of Jennifer's death and a ruthless killer. At around 7:30 p.m. that night, security cameras recorded Fotis and his girlfriend Michelle taking out the trash. Notably, they used up to 30 different garbage bags along Alfred Avenue in Hartford. When police searched the garbage bags, they found several suspicious items in the trash bags, including toiletries, bloody clothing, and used gloves. Blood on the clothing matched Jennifer, while Fotis' DNA was found on a glove and a garbage bag. These findings confirmed police's initial suspicions that Fotis was involved in Jennifer's disappearance. The case of Fotis murdering his wife was shocking, but what was even more shocking was the involvement of his girlfriend, Michelle Triconis. Michelle, a Venezuelan woman, had many roles in her life: mother, equestrian athlete, and former ESPN reporter in South America. However, no one expected her to become an accomplice in a murder. Michelle began a relationship with Fotis while he was still married to Jennifer, contributing to the breakdown of their marriage. After Jennifer went missing, the police questioned Michelle. When asked about her whereabouts on the day Jennifer disappeared, Michelle said she had lunch with Fotis and then went with him to one of Fotis' properties to clean up in preparation for a meeting with a client. However, the police suspected that this cleaning was actually to erase traces related to Jennifer's death. On the morning of May 24, 2019, Fotis stole a Toyota Tacoma truck from an employee and drove it to New Canaan, Connecticut. A school bus camera captured the truck traveling at high speed toward Waveney Park at 7:05 a.m. Jennifer's Chevrolet Suburban was later found in the park. Police found a bicycle tire in the trunk of the truck, supporting the theory that Fotis rode his bicycle approximately 3 miles from Waveney Park to Jennifer's New Canaan home. Police believe Fotis arrived at Jennifer's home before she left. When Jennifer arrived at the garage, Fotis attacked her. He then covered up the evidence. Fotis put Jennifer's body in her Chevrolet Suburban and drove to Waveney Park, where he transferred Jennifer's body to his truck. Despite Fotis's efforts to cover up his tracks, he left behind 2 key pieces of evidence at his new home in Canaan: his DNA on the doorknob and a mixture of his and Jennifer's blood on the kitchen faucet. Police believe Fotis spent hours cleaning the house. This was reinforced by neighbor surveillance footage that showed Jennifer's Chevrolet Suburban leaving the house around 11 p.m. Police were even more convinced of Fotis's guilt when he acted suspiciously 5 days after his wife's disappearance. Fotis drove away again in the truck without permission. This time, his destination confirmed police's suspicions. He drove straight to a local car wash and detail shop. Surveillance video captured a black SUV driven by Michelle following the truck. In the video, Fotis is seen stopping at a car wash, then getting into Michelle's SUV. Police suspect their intent was to remove evidence from the vehicle. However, this attempt failed when Jennifer's DNA was discovered by police on the passenger seat of the truck. Fotis became the prime suspect in Jennifer's disappearance due to the substantial evidence against him. On June 7, 2020, Fotis was arrested and charged with murder and kidnapping in connection with Jennifer's case. This was the first time he had been charged with these crimes, although the incident had occurred earlier. Fotis and Michelle were arrested on June 1, 2019, at a hotel in Anson, Connecticut. However, they were only charged with obstructing prosecution and tampering with evidence, not murder. This is because at the time, the police did not have enough evidence to charge them with the murder. While many may think that Fotis should have been arrested earlier on more serious charges, this only happened after the police gathered more evidence. Both Fotis and Michelle pleaded not guilty. Fotis hired attorney Norm Pattis to defend him. Norm was convinced that Jennifer was dead. Initially, Fotis and Michelle were released. However, in September 2019, they were arrested again on charges of tampering with evidence and obstructing justice. In October 2019, Fotis appeared in court to contest the charges against him. The judge said he would carefully review the case, listening to arguments from both the prosecution and the defense. During this time, Jennifer and Fotis's 5 children lived with their grandmother. The children's grandmother was granted temporary custody by the court. In January 2020, Fotis was arrested and charged with murdering his ex-wife in a Waterloo courtroom. At the same time, his girlfriend, Michelle, was also arrested for attempted murder. After his arrest, Michelle distanced herself from Fotis. In an interview, she admitted that she had made a big mistake in trusting Fotis. Before the incident, Michelle reportedly moved out of Fotis' $5 million home in Farmington with her daughter. Kent Douglas Mawaney, a former lawyer and friend of Fotis, was also arrested and charged with attempted murder. Police aggressively arrested him. They believe Kent helped Fotis and Michelle create an alibi for the morning of Jennifer's disappearance. During the same period, Kent also faced charges of rape against his wife. He was divorced from his wife, and the situation became even more tense after he was arrested in connection with Jennifer's case. Kent's wife felt her life was in serious danger. Kent's wife reported to the South Windsor Police Department that her husband was plotting to kill her with the help of Fotis. During the investigation, police discovered that Kent was a member of the East Granby Gun Club, a local hunting group. Police were notified that a human grave had been found on land associated with the club. After searching the property, police made a suspicious discovery, a shallow grave on the secluded property. Police found 2 bags of lime and a blue tarp in the grave. But no body. They suspect that someone had dug up the grave. Although the suspects have been arrested, Jennifer's body has not been found. Her family is devastated. Although justice is imminent for their daughter, they acknowledge that arresting Jennifer's killer will not bring her back, so the family's grief will never be completely gone. Fotis was set on $6 million bail on January 8, 2020. He was released the following day, but is due back in court on February 8, 2020. Michelle was also released on bail. Kent was initially set on $2 million bail, but it was later reduced to more than $200,000. He was released on bail on October 19, 2020. After Fotis's heinous acts began to be discovered, he became extremely fearful. On January 28, 2020, Fotis failed to appear at an emergency hearing, prompting the judge to issue a warrant for his arrest. When police arrived at Fotis's Farmington home to serve the warrant, they found him unconscious in his car. Unable to face the consequences of his actions, Fotis attempted suicide by inhaling carbon monoxide. He connected the SUV's exhaust pipe to a vacuum cleaner and placed it inside his car. Police performed CPR and restored his weak heartbeat. He was then taken by ambulance to Yukon Medical Center, then transferred to Jacob Medical Center in the Bronx for hyperbaric oxygen therapy. While in the hospital, Fotis' children, who were living with their grandmother, visited him for the first time since he was charged with Jennifer's murder. Police found a suicide note in Fotis's car. In it, he wrote that he could not bear to spend even 1 hour in jail for a crime he knew nothing about. On January 30, 2020, Jacob's Medical Center confirmed Fotis' death. Police later released a report that included information from Anna Curry, Fotis' last girlfriend. Anna said she was with Fotis on the day of the emergency hearing. According to Anna, she and Fotis planned to drive to court together, but finally Fotis suggested they go separately. Anna admitted that she was panicked and she received a call from Fotis's lawyer asking about Fotis's absence from court. Anna was driving at the time and responded that Fotis was supposed to be there. The attorney said the GPS device showed that Fotis was still at his home in Farmington. Anna immediately realized that Fotis might have harmed himself and asked the attorney to call 911. After Fotis' death, the murder charges against him were dismissed on March 3, 2020. The judge ordered the prosecutor to apply null prosequi, abandonment of prosecution. This does not mean that Fotis is acquitted, but simply that the case cannot proceed due to his death. Abandonment of prosecution acknowledges this fact, but gives the prosecutor 1 year to reopen the case if he wishes. Otherwise, the case will be dismissed permanently. During the hearing, Fotis' attorney Norm Pattis wanted to clear his client's name. He claimed that Fotis was framed and argued that the framer had dumped bloody clothes and incriminating evidence in front of Fotis's house. Norm explained that if Fotis was the perpetrator, he would not have accidentally dumped these items, leading to the police discovering them on surveillance cameras. Norm asked for the Fotis estate to be substituted as a defendant, but the request was not considered. Michelle is under house arrest after being charged with conspiracy to murder Jennifer. Michelle's attorney, John Sean, admitted in an interview that his client's case has not progressed. Michelle was scheduled to appear in court on August 6, 2020, while Kent Douglas Mamony was scheduled to appear in court on June 2, 2020. Both have pleaded not guilty to the charges. In an interview, Michelle responded to those who judge her without knowing her well. She admitted that she can be wrong about others, but she cannot say whether Fotis killed his wife. However, She believes that believing Fotis was a waste of time, and this has been proven true. For years after Jennifer went missing, she has still not been found. Police searched for her body in several locations over the years. In 2019, they began searching Wavani Park, 3 miles from New Canaan. They used dogs and a helicopter to thoroughly search the area. The search for Jennifer expanded beyond the initial area, including New York City, where the family owned property. After a thorough search there, police turned their attention to central Connecticut. In Hartford, police discovered surveillance footage showing Fotis dumping trash bags in various dumpsters around the city. This led to a weeks-long search of the waste treatment plant, where police found key evidence. The search continued at a fishing pond in Avon that the Dullos family frequented. Police also searched properties owned by Jennifer's husband's company in central Connecticut, with an estimated 3,000 acres searched. However, despite extensive search efforts, Jennifer has not been found. In August 2021, the investigation led police to a Farmington home on Mountain Spring Road that was associated with Jennifer's husband. Police decided to search the home to follow up on previous leads. They invited Bob Perry, a well-known expert in finding unmarked graves, to join the search. Police also brought in septic tank pumping equipment and an excavator to increase the effectiveness of the search. However, to date, police have not released any information about the discovery of Jennifer's body. Although the tragedy of Jennifer was heartbreaking, it did lead to a positive outcome. In May 2021, the Connecticut Senate passed a landmark domestic violence bill. The bill was named after Jennifer and Jennifer Magnano, 2 victims of domestic violence. The bill received near-unanimous support from members of the Senate. Governor Ned Lamont signed the bill into law on June 28, 2021. Jennifer's family is still deeply saddened by her passing. In a recent interview, a family spokesperson expressed their deep sorrow for Jennifer. He emphasized that her wonderful personality and optimistic spirit left a deep impression, causing even those who never met Jennifer to feel heartbroken by her disappearance. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Adrienne Jones. Adrienne Jessica Jones lived in Mansfield in 1995. At the age of 16, she made a strong impression on the surrounding community with her beauty. Adrienne was known for her hard work in school and her passion for sports, becoming a role model for many. In 1995, Adrienne was a junior at Mansfield High School. From the moment she started studying there, she quickly became a beloved figure. Her friends and teachers admired her kindness, intelligence, and positive spirit. Adrienne was an excellent and ambitious student. She took advanced classes and spent a lot of time studying every day. Her efforts were rewarded with high grades. After graduating from high school, Adrienne planned to become a veterinarian. In addition to her studies, Adrienne is also a talented athlete. She was a member of the women's soccer team and showed impressive skills. However, after an injury, she switched to the women's cross-country team. This shows Adrienne's perseverance and adaptability in both her studies and her sports. The decision to join the cross-country team helped Adrienne maintain an active lifestyle and improve her fitness. She accepted this new challenge and worked hard to improve her fitness. With her determination and dedication, Adrienne quickly became an important member of the team. In addition to her studies and sports activities, Adrienne also worked 20 hours a week at the fast food restaurant Golden Fried Chicken. She loved the attention, especially from teenage boys in Mansfield. A close friend described her as a flirt. Adrienne spent about 2 hours a day carefully applying makeup, always wanting to look perfect. Adrienne was a normal, well-behaved teenager who still tested her parents' boundaries. She had 2 younger brothers and was well protected by her parents. Due to the high crime rate in Mansfield, her parents imposed a curfew after 9 p.m. on weekends to ensure her safety. When Adrienne wanted to go out, such as to an amusement park or the movies, she had to notify her parents and show them her ticket as proof. To prevent her from sneaking out, her father even nailed her bedroom window shut. Although it was not frequent, there were a few times when Adrienne sneaked out in the middle of the night to meet up with friends. On Sunday, December 3, 1995, Adrienne was allowed by her parents to stay up late to talk on the phone with her boyfriend, Tracy Smith. Tracy was away on a family trip for the weekend, but Adrienne was desperate to get in touch with him. While they were talking, another call came in. Adrienne's mother heard her daughter was calling Tracy. When her mother asked who was calling, Adrienne said it was David, her cross-country teammate. Adrienne said David seemed upset about something. The next morning, Adrienne's family woke up as usual to get ready for work. When Adrienne's alarm clock continued to ring in her room, her mother began to worry. She went to check on her and found that Adrienne was disappeared. Her bed was made as if no one had slept in it the night before. Adrienne's mother tried to stay calm when she realized that her 16-year-old daughter was missing. At first, she thought Adrienne might have gone for a morning jog, but she quickly dismissed the idea when she saw that her daughter's running shoes were still in her room. Although Adrienne sometimes snuck out in the middle of the night to meet friends, she had never stayed out all night like this. Concerned for their daughter's safety, Adrienne's parents called the police. However, they had no idea that miles away, a man had just made a horrifying discovery on his farm. At approximately 7 a.m., on Seton Road in Grand Prairie, Texas, about 10 miles from Mansfield, a man discovered something unusual while going to get his mail. He noticed that the gate to his home had been knocked down. Curious, he decided to check and witnessed a horrifying scene. At first, he thought it was the carcass of a dead animal on the road, but as he got closer, he realized it was something much more horrifying. A man discovered the body of a young woman and quickly called the police. When police arrived at the scene, they witnessed a horrifying scene. The young woman had been shot twice, with obvious wounds to her left cheek and forehead. It was clearly a targeted murder. In addition, police discovered the young woman with a severe head injury, along with numerous scratches and bruises on her arms and legs. These injuries may have been caused by her running over the barbed wire fence in front of the farm in a desperate attempt to escape. Police found the teen wearing pajamas, as if she was getting ready for bed before she was murdered. They suspected that the case may be gang-related or drug-related, given the execution-style nature of the murder. After finding the body, Grand Prairie Police quickly sent out a notification to agencies in the area. The notification included basic information about the victim, such as age, height, weight, and other identifying characteristics. The goal was to share information and increase awareness, in the hopes of finding a connection between the victim and missing persons cases reported to other agencies. Mansfield police quickly identified the teen murdered in Grand Prairie as Adrienne. They contacted Grand Prairie Police to coordinate the investigation. The next step was to break the sad news to Adrienne's family. Upon hearing the news of her daughter's murder, Adrienne's mother was devastated. Since Mansfield is a small town, news of Adrienne's death quickly spread to Mansfield High School, where she attended. Adrienne's classmates and friends were devastated by the news. Many theories were put forward about the cause of her death, the most common of which was drug use. Some people were also concerned about the possibility of a serial killer on the loose in the community. Her mother reported a phone call between Adrienne and her boyfriend Tracy, and another teenager named David had called at the same time. According to her mother, one of Adrienne's younger brothers heard the sound of a car engine outside the house sometime after midnight. When he looked out, he saw a pickup truck driving away. Police was trying to identify David, who had been in contact with Adrienne on the night of her murder. To gather more information, they approached Adrienne's cross-country coach. The coach said that there was a member of the team named David Graham. However, the coach was surprised to hear that David had called Adrienne, as there had been no previous indication that the two had a relationship. David Graham was a typical American teenager. At the age of 7, after seeing an air show, David decided to become an Air Force pilot and told his father about his dream. Since then, he has worked hard to make his dream come true. At Mansfield High School, David was a popular and well-liked student. He had a natural charm and was always cheerful. Although many girls were interested in him, it was Diane Michelle Zamora, a senior, who pursued David. Diane stood out from the crowd because she shared David's desire to join the military and was actively pursuing her goal. After Adrienne was murdered, the police interviewed David Graham. David admitted to knowing Adrienne since they were both on the cross-country team, but insisted that they were just casual friends. The police asked David if he had been in contact with Adrienne the night she was murdered. David denied it completely, saying that he had been home studying with his girlfriend Diane Zamora that night. The police thoroughly investigated David as a suspect in Adrienne's murder. They contacted Adrienne's friends to find out more information. One of Adrienne's closest friends said that she knew all of Adrienne's secrets, but had never heard Adrienne mention David. Furthermore, when the police checked Adrienne's phone contacts, they did not find David's phone number. This discovery further confirmed that David had nothing to do with Adrienne's murder. So the police eliminated David from the list of suspects. They turned their attention to Tracy Smith, Adrienne's boyfriend. However, the police quickly established that Tracy had a solid alibi. On the night of the murder, he was out of town with his family. In addition, Tracy voluntarily took and passed a lie detector test. This evidence further proved Tracy's innocence in the case. During his interview with the police, Tracy Smith provided important information about Adrienne's murder. He said that on the night of the murder, while talking to Adrienne on the phone, she had told him that someone named Brian had called. Based on this statement, the police investigated and identified Brian as a local teenager whose full name was Brian McMillan. The police believed that Brian might be involved in the case and needed to be further investigated. During the investigation, the police discovered important information about Brian McMillan. They learned that Brian had worked at a pharmacy near the restaurant where Adrienne worked. Brian had developed a crush on Adrienne and frequently visited the restaurant to peek at her. However, Adrienne felt uncomfortable with his constant presence. When the police interviewed Brian about Adrienne's murder, he initially denied any involvement with her. However, Brian later admitted that he knew Adrienne. The police questioned Brian about Adrienne's murder. Brian did not remember talking to Adrienne on the night of her murder. He admitted that he had been drinking that night because he was depressed and lonely. Brian also confessed that he had been at Adrienne's house on the night of the murder. At the end of the interview, the police wanted Brian to take a lie detector test, but Brian's father refused to do so for his son. A week after the police interview, Brian was arrested at home. The police thought carefully and decided to carry a weapon because they suspected Brian might have a gun. They wanted to ensure everyone's safety during the arrest. Brian was charged with Adrienne's murder. However, many of his friends spoke out in his support, describing him as a gentle person with no violent tendencies. This created a contradiction between the police's accusations and the comments of those who knew Brian. Brian's father confirmed that his son was home the night Adrienne was murdered. Brian was held in custody for 3 weeks, including Christmas and New Year's, pending further investigation and legal proceedings. During this time, the district attorney's office asked Brian to take a polygraph test, which he passed with flying colors. Due to the lack of evidence linking Brian to Adrienne's murder, the district attorney's office decided to release him. After 9 months of investigating Adrienne's murder, the Mansfield, Texas police made a major breakthrough. The information came from Annapolis, Maryland, where Diane was a student at the Naval Academy. According to reports from officers at the academy, Diane admitted to several classmates that she and her boyfriend David Graham had murdered a girl named Adrienne Jones while they were living in Mansfield, Texas. Police from Mansfield traveled to Annapolis, Maryland to question Diane shortly after receiving the information. During the interview, Diane denied all of her previous confessions. However, the Naval Academy decided to suspend her and send her home while the investigation was ongoing. After failing to get any information from Diane, the police traveled to Colorado Springs, Colorado, to interview David at the Air Force Academy. When questioned, David said he did not understand why Diane would make up the story about killing Adrienne. During the interview, David began to lose his temper and asked to write a statement. He wrote a 4.5-page confession letter detailing how he and his girlfriend Diane planned to kill Adrienne. In the letter, David recounted an incident that occurred in November 1995 when he offered to give Adrienne a ride home. On the way, they stopped in an elementary school parking lot and had sex. David felt extremely remorseful after cheating on his girlfriend Diane. He loved her very much and knew that his actions would hurt her deeply. One night, while the two were studying for the SATs together, they had an argument. Unable to bear the guilt any longer, David decided to confess. He sat down on a chair, sobbed, and admitted to Diane that he had been unfaithful. After David confessed to Diane that he had been unfaithful and had an affair with Adrienne, Diane felt extremely hurt and angry. David's betrayal had broken her heart. In a fit of rage, Diane argued and yelled at David. She even wished he were dead and felt deep hatred for Adrienne. Diane's emotions were so strong that it was difficult for her to understand and accept what had happened. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, David told Diane that he was willing to do anything to save their relationship. David revealed that he and Diane had decided that in order to save their love, they needed to kill someone. They chose Adrienne as their victim. In his confession letter, David recounted that on December 3rd, he called Adrienne and arranged to meet her secretly late at night. He told Adrienne not to tell anyone about the meeting. David had originally planned to meet Adrienne alone, kill her, and dump her body in a lake. However, at 2:30 a.m., David picked Adrienne up in his car, and Diane secretly accompanied him by hiding in the back seat. David drove to a remote location 10 miles from town. Here, he turned off the highway and onto a road called Satan Road. David stopped the car on the side of the road. Adrienne gently adjusted her sitting position, thinking that she and David were about to have a private moment. However, David had silently called Diane out of the trunk of the car. Diane appeared from behind, walked around the front of the car, and approached. As she approached, she came face to face with Adrienne, who was sitting in the passenger seat. Diane attacked Adrienne with a dumbbell from David's exercise equipment. Despite being badly injured, Adrienne escaped through the window of David's car. David and Diane panicked, so David grabbed a 9mm Makarov and chased Adrienne. Due to her head wound, Adrienne did not get far and collapsed in a nearby field. When David caught up, he shot Adrienne twice and returned to the car. After Adrienne died, the first words Diane and David said to each other were, "I love you." After David confessed to killing Adrienne, the police returned to question Diane. Surprisingly, Diane also gave her own confession. Both David and Diane were arrested and charged with premeditated murder. However, both later recanted their initial statements. David claimed that Diane was the real culprit, while Diane accused David of acting alone. In 1998, Diane's trial took place in February of that year. During the trial, several witnesses testified that Diane had shown no remorse for killing Adrienne. After deliberations, the jury returned a verdict on February 17, finding Diane guilty of premeditated murder. As a result of this verdict, Diane was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 40 years. In the same case, David Graham was also convicted of Adrienne's murder and received the same sentence, life in prison with the possibility of parole after 40 years. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Crystal Rogers. Crystal Rogers, a 35-year-old mother of 4 from Bardstown, Kentucky, was known for her strong devotion to her children. She and her ex-husband Keith shared custody of their children. Despite the divorce, she maintained a friendly relationship with him for the sake of the children. At the time, her 2-year-old youngest son was with her current boyfriend, Brooks Houck. On July 5, 2015, Crystal's mother, Sherry Ballard, became worried when Crystal didn't respond to her phone calls. Crystal was a reliable and responsible who always responded to her calls, but this time Crystal was unresponsive. As the hours passed, Sherry's worry intensified, and after 24 hours without hearing from her daughter, she realized something was amiss. Sherry's instincts as a mother told her that Crystal's absence was unusual. She tried contacting Crystal multiple times, but her efforts were in vain. Sherry then reached out to Crystal's friends and family, hoping someone might know where she was, but no one had seen or spoken with her recently. Around the same time, Crystal's younger sister Brooke contacted Sherry, informing her mother that she too had been unable to reach Crystal. This makes Sherry even more worried and insecure. Crystal's boyfriend, Brooks, told her family that he had not seen her since Friday. He last saw her playing games on her phone before he went to bed. When he woke up the next morning, Crystal was gone. Brooks suspected she might have visited her cousin's house for the 4th of July celebrations. However, Crystal's mother, Sherry, became increasingly worried as she couldn't reach her daughter. She reported Crystal missing to the police department. While she was there, her son Casey received a call from a friend saying Crystal's car had been seen on the side of the road. This news alarmed Casey and his father, Tommy Ballard. They knew Crystal wouldn't voluntarily leave her car. When they arrived at the location, they found her car with a flat tire. This only deepened their concern, as they knew Crystal would have asked for help if she had car trouble. Casey and Tommy were puzzled as to why Crystal would stop the car to fix it herself. When they looked into the car, they noticed that Crystal's keys, phone, and wallet were still on the passenger seat. This discovery made them even more worried, as Crystal was not someone who would leave her belongings behind. The fact that her personal belongings were still in the car made her disappearance seem even more suspicious and unusual. After discovering Crystal's car on the Bluegrass Parkway, her father and brother immediately contacted the Nelson County Sheriff's Department. When investigators arrived at the scene, they found no signs of struggle, but one thing caught their attention: the driver's seat was positioned in a way that would have been uncomfortable for someone of Crystal's height, suggesting that someone else may have driven her car. The authorities continued to investigate and asked for help from potential witnesses. However, no one came forward with any useful information. The police then decided to use the media to appeal for public assistance in finding Crystal. They released her photo and asked for the public's help, but unfortunately, no one provided any significant leads. Tommy, Crystal's father, arranged search parties to find Crystal. The hot and humid weather made the searches challenging. Despite a large turnout, Crystal's boyfriend, Brooks, was absent. This made the police suspicious of his attitude. He seemed unconcerned about her disappearance. When questioned by detectives, Brooks provided an alibi, stating that Crystal and their young son had visited his family's farm the previous evening. They supposedly returned home around midnight, after which Brooks went to bed. He claimed Crystal stayed awake, engaged with her phone, playing games, as was her habit. In the morning, at 7 a.m., Brooks said their son was in bed with him, but Crystal was gone. Crystal's family initially suspected she might have gone out with her cousin. But those close to her dismissed this idea since she would never leave her 2-year-old son behind. Crystal's younger sister, Brooke, believed Crystal was planning to leave her partner, Brooks. According to Brooke, this was because Brooks had been dishonest with Crystal and lack of emotional attachment. Crystal told her mother, Sherry, that she wanted to leave Brooks. She said one of the main reasons was his controlling behavior towards her. Casey, Crystal's brother, had recently witnessed tension between Brooks and Crystal, including several heated arguments. The police asked Brooks to come in for questioning and take a polygraph test, but the results are not clear. Afterward, Brooks participated in a formal interview with the police. Detectives obtained video footage confirming details of Brooks' story. A video showed his truck entering the family farm, and later footage showed the vehicle leaving the property around midnight. However, because the windows of Brooks' truck were dark, police were unable to identify the occupants at the time. Brooks spent time at his parents' farm doing chores and setting a fire to burn some building materials. After for the fire to die down, he drove home. During a police interview, Brooks was questioned about a brief 13-second phone call he made to Steve Lawson, a business associate, while driving home. Brooks offered to have Steve explain the call to the police and asked him to call them during the interview. Steve claimed he called Brooks to get some phone numbers for a rental property, but Brooks said he needed to get home first and ask Crystal, who handled such matters. However, the police found Lawson's explanation suspicious, as it seemed rehearsed. The police were puzzled by this response, considering Brooks was with Crystal at the time of the call. They questioned why Brooks couldn't simply hand Crystal the phone, allowing her to discuss the issue immediately, rather than waiting to talk to her in person later. During Brooks's interview, his brother Nick, a Bardstown Police Department officer, called him with urgent advice to leave the interrogation room immediately. The police had doubts about their initial theory that Crystal had abandoned her car on the side of the Bluegrass Parkway and ran away. Instead, they suspected that something had happened to Crystal while she was at the Brooks family farm. As the investigation into Crystal's disappearance progressed, several people reported seeing Brooks's truck and Nick's police car at his family farm to the police. This led detectives to believe that the brothers might have been at the farm to dispose of evidence related to Crystal's disappearance. To learn more, the police brought in Brooks's brother, Nick, for questioning. They confronted him with eyewitness accounts placing that him at the farm on July 8 and asked him to explain his emergence there. Nick initially claimed he had no knowledge of the incident surrounding Crystal's disappearance and denied being present that night. The police continued questioning him, directly asking if he and Brooks had tampered with or hidden evidence related to Crystal's disappearance. Nick strongly denied any involvement and assured them that, as a police officer, he would never aid in covering up a crime. The police then asked Nick to submit to a polygraph test, which he agreed to. However, he failed to answer truthfully to two key questions: whether he knew Crystal's current location and if he was withholding information about her disappearance. Despite failing the polygraph test, Nick insisted that he was telling the truth. On October 15, investigators identified Brooks as the primary suspect in Crystal's disappearance. The same day, Brooks's brother, Nick, was terminated from the Bardstown Police Department for interfering with the investigation. Although the police were pretty sure they knew who the culprit was, they didn't have enough evidence to make an arrest. The police were concerned that if they took their suspect to court without sufficient evidence, the suspect might be acquitted. If that happened, they couldn't charge the suspect with Crystal's murder again. Due to the double jeopardy law. To help find more evidence, the FBI, Kentucky law enforcement agencies, Crystal's friends and family, volunteers, and missing people organizations conducted thorough searches at the Brooks family farm. The lengthy search left her loved ones terrified and desperate for news. As the search continued, her family remained hopeful that she would be found alive and well. At the Brooks family farm, investigators searched the ashes of a fire and, although they did not find any human remains, they did find pieces of clothing. Unfortunately, they were unable to link these clues to Crystal's case. The police executed multiple search warrants at the Brooks family farm, focusing on their cars and residences. However, these searches failed to yield significant leads or evidence related to Crystal's disappearance. A $100,000 reward was offered for any information that could help find Crystal, but no one stepped forward with any tips despite this large incentive. Tommy, Crystal's father, took it upon himself to investigate his daughter's disappearance, following every lead he received, no matter how small or insignificant it may have seemed. His determination was unwavering, driven by his love for Crystal. Unfortunately, Tommy had already faced a devastating loss in his family. In January 1979, his pregnant sister was brutally murdered by her husband and his accomplice. The perpetrators shot and beat her, set her remains on fire, and scattered them on a farm. Although it took years, but the suspects were eventually arrested, found guilty, and sentenced to life in prison. Tommy remained committed to finding out what happened to his daughter Crystal, despite the many challenges he faced. He conducted his own investigation, canvassing the neighborhood, conducting interviews, and reaching out to anyone who might have information about his daughter's disappearance. To aid in his search, Tommy also utilized his own savings to hire private investigators and cadaver dogs. To keep track of the investigation, Tommy carefully documented every clue he found. He worked with the police, sharing his discoveries and asking for their advice. November 2016, Tommy took his 11-year-old grandson, Crystal's son, on a hunting trip on their property early in the morning. As they left, Tommy's wife Sherry watched them go, feeling uneasy. She couldn't help but pray for their safety in the woods. Sherry tried to calm down after they left, but her peace was short-lived. Just minutes later, she received a frantic phone call from her grandson, Crystal's son. His voice shook with fear. He then exclaimed, "Mimo, Papa has been shot." Sherry's world came crashing down. Her nephew's panicked voice on the phone told her something terrible had happened. She quickly threw on some clothes and rushed to call 911, and she reassured her distressed grandson that help was on the way. Her mind was flooded with fears of what might have happened to her husband, Tommy. When Sherry arrived at the scene, she witnessed a horrifying sight: her husband lying on the ground, unresponsive. Distraught, she rushed to his side and tried to wake him up, hoping he would respond. But her efforts only revealed a grim truth: blood was pouring out of his nose. The officers and bystanders at the scene quickly pulled her away so that the medical team could try to save him, but it was too late. Tommy was pronounced dead. The initial police reports suggested that Tommy's death was the result of a hunting accident. However, Sherry knew this could not be true. She was adamant that her husband had been murdered, and she made her feelings clear to the authorities. "This is no accident," she insisted. "This is she husband, and it's a murder, and you know it." During the investigation, the investigators was found that Tommy's own gun had not been used, making it unlikely that he had committed suicide. The investigators then determined that Tommy's 11-year-old grandson was not involved in the shooting. As the investigation progressed and more facts came to light, Sherry's suspicion that her husband's death was indeed a murder gained credibility. The Kentucky State Police have informed the public that they are treating Tommy Ballard's death as a murder. The Tommy family believes that he was killed because he was getting close to discovering what happened to his missing daughter, Crystal. They think the people responsible for Crystal's disappearance felt threatened by Tommy's investigation and had him murdered to prevent the truth from coming out. In 2022, the FBI conducted a 5-day investigation into Crystal's disappearance. Investigators returned to the Brooks family farm to search for more evidence, with the goal of gathering enough information to hold suspects for Crystal's disappearance accountable. In October 2022, the FBI confirmed that it would analyze all evidence collected at its lab in Quantico. As the investigation into Crystal's disappearance continued, the Kentucky Attorney General appointed a special prosecutor to help prosecute criminal charges related to the deaths of Crystal Rogers and her father, Tommy. Crystal's mother, Sherry, was aware of and fully supported the decision to appoint a special prosecutor. She believed the move was necessary to ensure justice for her husband and daughter, and she viewed the appointment as a positive development that brought new perspective and expertise to the case. The decision to appoint a special prosecutor also showed that the case was being taken seriously and that those responsible would be held accountable. On September 2023, authorities arrested Crystal's boyfriend, Brooks Houck, and charged him with murder and tampering with physical evidence. The court set Brooks bail at $10 million and prohibited him from contacting Crystal's family members. Notably, Brooks was previously arrested in 2022 for multiple traffic offenses and was released after paying a series of fines. When Brooks was arrested for Crystal's murder, many in Bardstown brought a sense of relief. While the confirmation of Crystal's death was devastating, the community was relieved to know that justice was being pursued, bringing some sense of closure to the case. 1 month after his arrest, in October 2023, Brooks appeared in court for the first time, though virtually rather than in person. The judge inquired if the special prosecutor, Shane Young, was investigating other cases related to Crystal's case. The prosecutor confirmed that they were looking into the death of Tommy, Crystal's father, and suspected a connection between the two murders. Notably, Shane Young believed they had obtained the gun used to kill Tommy. The firearm was reportedly purchased from Nick, who allegedly used an alias during the transaction. Preliminary investigations revealed that the caliber of the rifle matched the one used in Tommy's shooting. Shane Young stated that they were examining the gun based on 5 key criteria. So far, the results have matched 4 of these criteria, suggesting a possible link between the firearm and Tommy's murder. Crystal's grandfather felt relief when the special prosecutors, Shane Young, connected the 2 murders in court. They hoped for a swift and fair outcome in both cases. However, when questioned about the allegations by Shane Young, Brooks and Brooks' mother refused to answer any questions. During the court hearing, the prosecutor alleged that the Brooks family had secretly recorded the grand jury proceedings. The prosecutor claimed that several family members Brooks were involved in this activity. Brooks' attorneys requested that the Nelson County judge be removed from the case, citing bias. They claim that the judge has had a hostile view of Brooks since 2017. The attorneys also argued that the $10 million bail is excessive and should be reconsidered. Attorneys representing Brooks argued that having a biased judge hear the case would be unfair to him. The lawyers argued that the judge's previous statements and actions showed that he was unfair. They asked the court to remove the judge and quickly appoint a new judge to ensure a fair trial. The Kentucky Appeals Court has recently made 2 key decisions. Firstly, Brooks will remain in jail with a $10 million bond. Secondly, the court has denied a request to remove the judge presiding over Brooks's trial. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Shauna Nelson. Heather is a girl with a cheerful, sweet, and innocent personality. Her beauty was characterized by white skin, rosy lips, and dark hair, which captivated Ignacio, who affectionately called her his Snow White. When Ignacio asked her out on their first date, Heather was overjoyed. She eagerly shared the news with her roommates. Heather's friends were particularly thrilled for her, as she hadn't had much dating experience before, and they thought this could be the start of something special. Heather and Ignacio's bond grew stronger. Ignacio consistently showed his care and thoughtfulness by surprising Heather with her favorite flowers and coffee. His considerate nature made Heather feel loved and appreciated. After Ignacio graduated from the University of Northern Colorado, he decided to propose to Heather. She happily accepted his proposal. However, Heather made one condition clear: if Ignacio ever cheated on her, she would end their marriage immediately, regardless of any apologies or attempts to make amends. She would not tolerate infidelity in their relationship. After making her stance clear, Heather and Ignacio decided to get married within a year of their engagement. Their wedding was a beautiful and joyful celebration. Ignacio began working as a law enforcement officer at the Greeley, Colorado Police Department, while Heather worked as a supervisor at the local credit union. She quickly gained the admiration and respect of her colleagues and customers alike. They appreciated her exceptional ability to comfort credit union members during difficult times. A coworker described Heather as wonderful all the way around, reflecting her kind and caring nature. After 5 years of marriage, Heather and Ignacio welcomed their beautiful firstborn daughter, Victoria. Heather's world was filled with joy as she became a mother. Ignacio also proved to be an outstanding father. From the outside, their life seemed perfect. A picture of happiness and contentment. Heather's life took a big change in 1997 when her father suddenly passed away from a heart attack. Just a few days later, her mother received a devastating cancer diagnosis. Despite the immense grief, Heather remained committed to caring for her mother, selflessly dedicating herself to supporting she over the next several years until she passing in 2003. During this challenging period, Heather's husband, Ignacio, played a supportive role, caring for their daughter, Victoria, and helping with household responsibilities. However, as time passed, he began to develop an interest in a new woman, Shauna Nelson, a dispatcher at the Greeley Police Department. Shauna was already married to Ken, a Weld County Sheriff's deputy, and they had 2 children. The couple's marriage, however, was struggling. Ken believed their relationship problems began when she returned to work after giving birth to their second child. Initially, the connection between she and Ignacio was friendly. But it soon evolved into a flirtatious exchange of comments and playful banter, marks the beginning of an extramarital affair. Shauna's compliments had a profound effect on Ignacio, captivating him and sparking a deep attraction. As they spent more time together, their initially friendly interactions developed into a deep love affair. Ignacio's feelings for Shauna continued to intensify, transforming from casual flirting to a passionate and intimate bond. Despite being married, they couldn't resist their strong attraction to each other. As Ignacio and Shauna's secret relationship became the subject of local gossip, Heather remained unaware of the affair. No one was willing to inform her, resulting in the relationship between Ignacio and Shauna growing stronger, while Heather remained in the dark. Shauna soon discovered she was pregnant and she shared the news with Ignacio, but his reaction surprised her. Instead of being overjoyed, Ignacio questioned the paternity of the baby, wondering if it was his or her husband Ken's child. Shauna told Ignacio that her husband had a vasectomy after their second child, so Ken cannot be the father of the child she is carrying in her belly. However, Ignacio, knowing that his wife Heather would be furious if she found out about Shauna's pregnancy, Ignacio became anxious. He didn't want the baby, and he desperately looked for a way out. Shauna agreed with Ignacio's plan, and he convinced her to have an abortion. He then drove her to the clinic for the procedure. Years passed, and Heather remained unaware of her husband's affair with Shauna. However, Shauna grew impatient and eventually decided to confront Heather. One day, Shauna and her friend Michelle Moore followed Heather to the grocery store, keeping a safe distance as they observed her. Heather, still unaware of their emergence, talked to a friend on the phone. Shauna eventually approached Heather and started yelling insults and accusations at her. Heather was deeply shaken after a disturbing encounter with Shauna at the grocery store. She recognized Shauna as her husband Ignacio's co-worker from the police department, whom she had met at several work Christmas parties. Heather asked Ignacio why Shauna, who had always been friendly to her, would suddenly lash out with hurtful words. Ignacio explained that Shauna had developed a crush on him, but assured Heather that she had nothing to worry about. Ignacio stepped in to address the issue, telling Shauna to leave Heather alone. He spoke to Shauna directly, but she became angry with him. However, Ignacio's intervention failed to stop Shauna's harassment, as she continued to bother Heather. Shauna once arrived unexpectedly at Heather and Ignacio's home, demanding to see Ignacio. Heather attempts to brush off the suspicion of an improper relationship between her husband and Shauna, his co-worker, but she can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. Unbeknownst to Heather, Shauna had confided in a colleague at the county dispatch center about her affair with Ignacio. Shauna claims to be deeply in love with Ignacio, saying she felt more strongly for him than for anyone else she had ever met. However, she also expressed her frustration that Heather stood in the way of their relationship. Shauna revealed to her supervisor that she would often visit the shooting range to manage her frustrations. While target shooting, Shauna would imagine that the targets were Heather. Meanwhile, Shauna's husband, Ken, remained unaware that his wife had been having an affair with Ignacio for years, until he discovered a diary detailing her relationship. Despite this, Ken chose to stay in the marriage for the sake of their children, rather than leaving Shauna after learning of her infidelity. Shauna was aware that she was not the only woman in Ignacio's life. He was having an affair with another woman, and this realization led Shauna to closely monitor his actions. Determined to be the only woman he was involved with, she threatened to tell Heather everything if he ever left her. As time passed, Shauna's fixation on Ignacio grew stronger. In an attempt to cement her place in his life, Shauna got a tattoo of his family name on her leg in July 2005. Her obsession, however, soon turned into an unhealthy fixation that led to her stalking him. Whenever Heather and Ignacio took their daughter, Victoria, out to a restaurant, Shauna and her family would coincidentally show up. Ignacio noticed the alarming shift in Shauna's behavior but chose to continue their illicit relationship despite his growing unease. When Shauna discovered she was pregnant with Ignacio's child for the second time, she immediately informed him she intended to keep the baby. Shauna gave birth to their son, Christian, in March 2006. However, due to Ignacio's wife being unaware of the situation, Ken proposed a solution. He would raise Christian as his own, provided Shauna remained his wife. Shauna agreed to the arrangement. In the summer of 2006, a woman approached Heather with unexpected news. Shauna Nelson had given birth to Ignacio's child. Heather was stunned and confused by this revelation. Upon returning home, Heather confronted her husband, Ignacio, about the child, seeking answers. Ignacio attempted to conceal his affair with Shauna, lying to his wife once again. Heather maintained her trust in Ignacio until one night in December 2006, when she woke up to find him gone. As she waited for his return, she became increasingly anxious. When Ignacio finally came back home, Heather confronted him immediately. Unlike his past responses, Ignacio chose to be honest this time. He confessed to spending the night with Shauna and revealed that the affair had been ongoing for years. He also shared that Shauna had been pregnant with his child twice and had recently given birth to their son. Following Ignacio's confession, Heather took the action she had previously threatened. She ended their relationship and asked him to leave the house. However, her deep-seated desire to keep her family together led her to reconsider and call Ignacio the next day. Despite her initial shock, anger, and skepticism, Heather's priority was keeping her family intact. She feared that ending the relationship would have a negative impact on their daughter Victoria, forcing her daughter to grow up in a household with divorced parents. Heather had a conversation with Ignacio about their feelings for each other. Heather lets him know that she still loves him, and she believes he does too. Heather wanted to save their marriage and made it clear that she did not plan to file for divorce. However, she also made it clear that she was not ready to immediately reconcile. Before considering reconciling, Heather presented Ignacio with several requirements. First, she asked him to take an STD test to ensure his health. Additionally, Heather also suggested that they attend counseling together to help them work through the difficulties of repairing the relationship and working through any issues that led to his affair. She asked Ignacio to relinquish his father rights to Shauna's baby, and she wanted him to end his relationship with Shauna altogether. Ignacio, determined to save his marriage, accepted all the conditions Heather set in order. He took responsibility for his wrongdoing and was willing to make things right. As part of the agreement, Ignacio called Shauna and ended their affair. Heather was present and listened to the entire conversation. Shortly after Ignacio hung up the phone, Heather received a text message on her cell phone. The message included a photo of Shauna and Ignacio's son, Christian, with the caption, "IGS Flesh and Blood," beneath it. Shauna was furious about the sudden end to her relationship with Ignacio, who chose to stay with Heather instead. Feeling betrayed and abandoned, her anger intensified. In response, Shauna began publicly talking about suing Ignacio for Christian's financial support in early 2007. Ignacio and Heather were working to repair their marriage after his infidelity. Despite their challenges, the couple was determined to move forward. However, Ignacio's former mistress, Shauna, continued to harass Heather, making reconciliation difficult. Shauna's behavior became more and more aggressive, prompting Ignacio and Heather to take action. To protect Heather's car from potential damage by Shauna, they started parking it in the garage. They also sought help from a lawyer, who sent Shauna a formal notice requiring her to stay away from Ignacio, Heather, and their daughter, Victoria. The notice clearly stated that Shauna was to stop harassing and intimidating the family but she ignored the warning. Instead, she persisted in sending Heather malicious messages via text, email, and voicemail to intimidate and provoke Heather. On January 23, 2007, at around 6 p.m., Heather was walking out of her workplace at the credit union. It was just after 6 p.m. As she walked out of the building with her co-workers into the dark parking lot, she was looking forward to a quiet night at home with her daughter. But her evening took a terrifying turn when a person dressed in black and wearing a Halloween mask approached the group, aiming a gun directly at Heather. The gunman appeared to be targeting Heather specifically, and as others in the group tried to seek cover, the gunman ordered Heather to kneel down and pointed the gun at her head. Right before pulling the trigger, the gunman expressed a personal vendetta, saying, "You ruined my life," and then shot Heather twice at close range. The gunshot wounds were fatal and inflicted in an execution-style manner. After shooting Heather, the gunman quickly escaped in a nearby red pickup truck. Meanwhile, Heather's co-workers and other witnesses immediately called 911 for help. Minutes later, paramedics arrived at the scene, but unfortunately, Heather did not make it. Due to the severity of the head injuries, Heather was pronounced dead at the scene. When police officers arrived at the crime scene, a parking lot, they were shocked to discover that the shooting victim was Heather, the wife of their co-worker Ignacio. Recognizing the victim, the officers immediately notified Ignacio and instructed him to go to the hospital. Upon arrival, Ignacio rushed through the hospital hallways to reach Heather's trauma room, but he was stopped by a doctor who delivered heart-wrenching news: Heather had passed away. The news was devastating for Ignacio, and he was now faced with the difficult task of informing their 9-year-old daughter, Victoria, about her mother's passing. As the investigation continued, witnesses at the crime scene shared their accounts of the events. One witness reported seeing the shooter suddenly appear and then flee in a red pickup truck, while another suggested that the shooter might have been a woman, based on their running style. Shauna Nelson has become the prime suspect in the investigation, linked to Heather's harassment. It was also mentioned that Shauna may have had a motive for the shooting because she had an affair with Ignacio. The police officers at the crime scene were already familiar with Shauna and her husband, Ken, a police officer. What drew their attention was the fact that Ken owned a car similar to the one used by the shooter. As the evidence against Shauna grew, police sent out an alert to all units, focusing on Shauna and the red pickup truck she was driving. Ken was on duty that night and was driving patrol car when he received a radio alert about his wife and vehicle. He quickly began looking for his wife. 20 minutes later, he found her driving his vehicle close to their home. She explained that she had been out running errands, but he became suspicious when he noticed that she wasn't wearing shoes, which seemed unusual considering it was January in Colorado. It will be very cold. What further raised Ken's suspicions was that Shauna was wearing his clothing, including his socks, underwear, and pants. After stopping Shauna, he called for assistance and the police soon arrived to take her into custody. The authorities then launched an investigation to determine if Shauna had any involvement in Heather's murder. Investigators made several key proof in their investigation. They found a pair of shoes with Shauna's DNA near the crime scene, less than 1,000 feet away. In the parking lot where Heather was shot, they recovered 2 shell casings from a .40 caliber Glock Model 22, the same type of gun used by Ken for his job. This new evidence strengthened the case against Shauna. The investigation also turned up a Halloween mask hidden under the seat of Ken's red pickup truck. The mask closely resembled the one worn by the suspect in the shooting of Heather. At Shauna's home, investigators found a bathtub filled and ready for use, suggesting that Shauna may have planned to wash off any blood after the crime. After Shauna's arrest, her clothing and hands were tested for gunshot residue. The results were positive, showing that she had recently been around a gun. With this new evidence, Shauna was eventually charged with first-degree murder. Despite matching shell casings from the murder weapon, the actual gun used to kill Heather was never recovered. The reason for this was partly due to the actions of Ken, who stopped Shauna after the murder but failed to detain her. As a result, Ken was charged with destruction of evidence and abetting first-degree murder. During her police interrogation, Shauna provided an alibi for her whereabouts at the time of the murder. She explained that she had put on some of her husband's dirty clothes from the laundry basket, which is why she was wearing them. Shauna claimed she went to the store, realized she forgot her wallet, and then drove back home. However, when questioned about Heather's murder, Shauna denied any involvement or knowledge of the crime. Ignacio was also questioned by the police but was eventually cleared of suspicion in February 2008. Shauna's trial for the murder of Heather began, with Shauna pleading not guilty to the charges. The prosecution argued that Shauna's fixation with Ignacio, a married police officer, was the primary motivation behind her murder of Heather, and that this was not Shauna's first affair with a married officer. The state negotiated a deal with Michelle Moore, a key witness and Shauna's former best friend. Michelle often accompanied Shauna when she would intimidate and harass Heather. In exchange for a reduced sentence, Michelle agreed to testify against Shauna. During her testimony, Michelle made it clear how much Shauna disliked Heather and even confessed that she helped plan the murder. In contrast, Shauna took the stand in her own defense, strongly denying all allegations against her. Shauna specifically denied having conversations about her fantasies of killing Heather or picturing Heather in her mind during target practice with others. She also claimed to have had no involvement in the killing itself, stating she was on her way to a liquor store at the time of the shooting. As part of her defense, Shauna proposed an alternative explanation for Heather's murder. She suggested that Michelle might have killed Heather to make her happy. However, when Michelle was questioned further, she dismissed Shauna's claims. The prosecution alleged that Shauna dressed in her husband's clothes during the shooting to frame him for the crime. The state claimed that by killing Heather, Shauna and Ignacio would be able to start a new life together. After 5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Shauna guilty of first-degree murder. The judge addressed Shauna, stating that she deserved the sentence she received. Shauna's former friend, Michelle, was sentenced to 9 years in prison for her role in planning Heather's murder. Following Shauna's conviction, her husband Ken resigned from the police department, filed for divorce, and moved out of state with their children. However, he eventually returned to Colorado and expressed hope that their children would one day visit Shauna in prison. Despite the circumstances, Ken believed that Shauna was a caring and wonderful mother. Heather's family is relieved Shauna is in custody and they feel justice has been served. Her loved ones hope Shauna will spend the rest of her life reflecting on the suffering she caused Heather. Shauna's actions had dire consequences. She separated Heather from her loved ones, ultimately depriving the love, care, and nurturing that a mother would give to her daughter, Victoria. Unfortunately, when Victoria, 17 years old, she died in a car accident in 2015. Her vehicle crashed into a tree after she lost control, resulting in her untimely death. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Sherry Papini. Keith Papini and Sherry first met in junior high, when he was in 7th grade and she was in 8th grade. Their friendship quickly blossomed and they remained close throughout their teenage years. However, over time, they lost contact with each other and went separate ways. Sherry eventually moved on and married another man in 2006, but their marriage was short-lived, lasting only 2 years. After her divorce, Sherry found herself single once again. Unbeknownst to her, a chance encounter with Keith was on the horizon, and their reunion would rekindle the spark they had long ago. This unexpected reunion revealed the growth and maturity that time apart had brought them. They discovered how much they had missed each other and decided to give their relationship a second chance. As they started dating, their connection grew stronger with each passing day. Within a year of reuniting, Keith and Sherry realized they were meant to be together. In 2009, they got married and had 2 children and lived in Redding, California. To care for her children, Sherry left her job in telecommunications, and Keith continued working at Best Buy as a member of the Geek Squad. Keith and Sherry Papini had what seemed like the perfect life to those around them. However, their seemingly idyllic life took a drastic turn on November 2, 2016, when Keith returned home from work to find his wife, Sherry, missing. Normally, Sherry was at home when Keith arrived, but she was nowhere to be found this time. Keith initially thought Sherry might have gone for a walk, but as the minutes ticked by with no sign of her return, his concern grew. He decided to call their children's daycare center to see if Sherry had picked up the kids. To his surprise and concern, the school secretary told him that Sherry had not been there. Keith then decided to track Sherry's phone using the Find My iPhone app. The app showed that her phone was located at the end of their driveway. Keith immediately ran outside and began searching. To his dismay, he found Sherry's phone lying on the ground, along with her headphones. What's more, he discovered strands of hair tangled in the headphones. Distraught, Keith quickly contacted the Shasta County Sheriff's Office. The sheriff's office acted quickly and treated Sherry's disappearance as a serious matter from the very beginning, they bringing in the FBI to assist with the investigation. Keith is determined to find his wife and bring her home safely. To achieve this, he has asked for the public's assistance. Keith contacted the media to help spread the word about Sherry's disappearance, they sharing her story by covering every detail of her case. As a result, the public became deeply interested in Sherry's disappearance, largely due to her striking appearance and the seemingly ideal life she led. As the story gained media attention, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office started receiving numerous tips from the public. However, these information do not assist in finding Sherry. In their investigation, police examined Sherry's phone for clues. Upon reviewing the phone's contents, investigators found a heated text message exchange between Sherry and Keith from a few months earlier. This discovery raised suspicions about Keith's involvement in Sherry's disappearance. Despite these concerns, Keith cooperated with the police investigation and even volunteered to take a polygraph test to clear his name. The test results showed that Keith was telling the truth. Aside from the text message exchange between Keith and Sherry, investigators found several messages on Sherry's phone from men using fake female names. Further examination suggested that Sherry was preparing to leave Keith. On November 10, 2016, the police located one of these men and questioned him about Sherry's location. He reported meeting Sherry 5 years prior at a restaurant during a work event. Although he claimed to have no knowledge of her whereabouts, he did offer some insight into her marriage to Keith. He shared that she had confided in him about her fear of her husband, Keith, due to his violent behavior. He claimed Keith often confined Sherry to their home. The police opened an investigation into Keith's behavior to verify these allegations. However, after questioning friends and neighbors, they found no concrete evidence supporting Keith's portrayal as a violent person. Friends of the couple shared a different perspective. They described Sherry as attention-seeking and has a tendency to overreact. This new information led the police to consider that Sherry might have exaggerated or fabricated about being abused by her husband. On Thanksgiving morning, just days after Sherry went missing, police received a call for help at 4:32 a.m. The caller reported a woman on the side of I-5 who seemed to need assistance. Officers quickly are present to the scene and found a woman bound by chains and zip ties. Due to her disheveled state, it took a moment for them to identify the woman as Sherry. The officers were relieved to find Sherry alive. They carefully removed her chains and zip ties to ensure her safety. After her release, the officers took Sherry to the hospital for medical attention. It was at the hospital that the full extent of Sherry's ordeal became clear. She had multiple bruises, her hair had been cut short, and she had a burn mark on her arm. Additionally, she had a severe rash and had lost a significant amount of weight, dropping to just 87 pounds. Sherry was interviewed at Woodland Memorial Hospital while recovering, but she was too distraught to share any details without her husband present. Her husband, Keith, was allowed to stay with her during the interview. According to Sherry, she was jogging when a dark-colored SUV approached. The vehicle was driven by 2 women. The older woman, who had a gun, got out of the car and approached Sherry, while the younger woman stayed in the vehicle. Sherry stated she was forced into the SUV. Before getting in, Sherry left her phone, headphones, and some of her hair behind in the driveway. She intentionally left clues for Keith in case anything went wrong. During the journey in the SUV, Sherry said she drifted in and out of sleep, making it difficult to keep track of time. The women also covered Sherry's face, preventing her from seeing the direction or location she was being taken. Sherry reported that her captors, 2 women, told her that she was taken because a man wanted to buy her. However, the women did not provide any information about the man's identity or his location. As a result, Sherry felt unease and fear, unsure of where she was being taken or what would happen to her during her captivity. During her testimony, Sherry also claimed to have experienced physical abuse from one of the captors. She alleged that this woman physically hit her many times, causing various injuries. She stated that she was branded on her right shoulder with the word Exodus, which would reportedly make her more appealing to her buyer. Sherry's captors played Mexican mariachi music constantly, of discomfort for Sherry. Throughout her captivity, Sherendra was confined to a small room with boarded-up window. Sherry described the basic but unsanitary and uncomfortable living conditions. In the closet, where she was chained, there was a bucket for her to use for both bowel movements and urination. Approximately 3 weeks after being in captivity, Sherry heard the sound of a gunshot. After that, she never saw the older Hispanic woman again. The other captor, who had been known to remain silent, now communicated more and ordered Sherry into a car, then driven along Interstate I-5. Car suddenly came to a stop, catching Sherry off guard. Startled, she looked around, and was then instructed by kidnapper to exit the vehicle. Sherry carefully got out of the car, feeling both frightened and hopeful. Was this her chance to escape, or was she being led into a more dangerous situation? Without any clear answers, she was left with deep uncertainty. After Sherry's rescue from the side of Interstate 5, the Shasta County Sheriff's Office held a press conference to announce her safe return. During the conference, authorities revealed that Sherry had been abducted by 2 Hispanic women. Unfortunately, this has sparked a wave of racism against Hispanics. In the aftermath of her abduction, Sherry began attending therapy sessions to cope with her ordeal. Fortunately, as a California resident, she became eligible for the Victims' Compensation Fund, which uses state budget to help pay for victims' therapy in the aftermath of the abduction. Sherry has changed her life, giving up her outgoing personality and limiting her social interactions. She now spends most of her time indoors, instead of participating in many of the social activities she once enjoyed. The police released a composite sketch of 2 Hispanic women suspected to be involved in Sherry's abduction about a year into the investigation. However, no new information or leads were received. The police also disclosed that they found male DNA on Sherry's underwear, the same one she was wearing when she was found on the side of the I-5. Authorities confirmed that the DNA did not belong to Sherry's husband, Keith. 2 years after her abduction, the police were still unable to find a match for the male DNA on Sherry's underwear. And the case remained unresolved. In 2020, a significant development took place in the investigation of Sherry's case. The police responsible for her case applied for approval to utilize a new technology called familial DNA analysis, which involves examining DNA profiles to pinpoint possible relatives of the person who contributed the DNA. Familial DNA testing is a crucial tool in solving crimes. It works by comparing DNA evidence to the DNA of known individuals, usually family members of a suspect, to see if there's a match. To aid in the investigation, researchers use genetic markers shared among relatives to narrow down the pool of suspects. In the Sherry Papini case, the police have found new clues when they matched male DNA found on her underwear to family member James Reyes, Sherry's ex-boyfriend. This unexpected result led to numerous questions and changed the direction of the investigation. As a result, the police began to suspect Sherry's ex-boyfriend of being involved in her abduction. To investigate further, the police collected a soda bottle from James's trash and sent it to the forensic lab for DNA analysis in June 2020. The lab then compared the DNA from the soda bottle to the DNA sample found on Sherry's underwear. 1 month later, the lab confirmed that James Reyes was a match to the DNA sample discovered on Sherry's panties the day she was found. The police interviewed James at his home in Costa Mesa, California, about the disappearance of his former girlfriend, Sherry. James stated that he had dated Sherry about 10 years ago and last saw her a year after their breakup. When asked if he was involved in her kidnapping, James initially denied any involvement. However, as the interview progressed, James revealed that he was still close friends with Sherry. He said he was involved in Sherry's disappearance but didn't kidnap her. Instead, he just helped her. According to James, Sherry had contacted him about escaping her abusive husband, Keith. To help her, James arranged for a car, which was rented by one of his friends on November 2, 2016. James used that vehicle to pick up Sherry the next day. Sherry stayed in the back seat of the car during the long drive to James' house in Costa Mesa, lying down the entire time. Once they arrived, Sherry isolated herself in the bedroom for the remainder of her stay. James continued with his daily routine, while Sherry occasionally helped out by cleaning and cooking. During her stay, Sherry started dieting to lose weight. She also asked James to help her harm herself on purpose. Her requests included creating bruises by hitting herself. Sherry asked James to hit her knee with a hockey puck. At first, James was hesitant, but he eventually agreed to her requests. Furthermore, James stated that Sherry asked him to brand the word Exodus onto her right shoulder using a wood-burning tool from Hobby Lobby. James admitted to complying with this request as well. Eventually, Sherry informed James that she had decided to leave his house. Before departing, she requested that James obtain chains and zip ties. Sherry then instructed James drove her back to Redding, California. During the drive, Sherry ordered James to pull over, and he complied. She immediately exited the vehicle, and James drove away. When questioned by the police, James claimed he had no knowledge of the incident Sherry described, involving two Hispanic women. However, when the police visited James's house, they were startled by what they found. The layout of several rooms matched the descriptions Sherry had provided, including James' bedroom and closet, which exactly matched a drawing Sherry had created for the police. Several days later, the police met with Sherry and Keith at the police station. During the interview, the police had evidence that suggested Sherry had faked her own kidnapping, and they were prepared to confront her about it. Before revealing the truth, they asked Sherry if she wanted her husband Keith to leave the room. However, Sherry remained silent. The police decided to leave Sherry and Keith alone for a few minutes. During this time, Sherry shared a secret with Keith. Sherry told her husband that she didn't want the police to find the Hispanic woman who kidnapped her because she felt grateful to the woman for letting her go. As a result, she had no intention of pressing charges against the woman. Keith listened to his wife's explanation but became concerned and scared as her words made no sense to him. He pointed out that even if Sherry chose not to press charges, the woman would still face consequences for her actions. The police then re-entered the room and shared a crucial piece of information. They had obtained a DNA match for the male DNA found on Sherry's clothing. That DNA belongs to James Reyes, his wife's ex-boyfriend. Then, the police informed Sherry and Keith that James had passed a polygraph test, suggesting James was telling the truth. The police believed that Sherry might have faked her abduction, and they claimed to have gathered evidence supporting James' version of what happened. According to the police, they also told Sherry that they had discovered information that suggested her weight loss during her disappearance was intentional. Additionally, they believed the rash on her arms could have been caused by the cleaning products she used at James's home. The investigation into Sherry's kidnapping progressed when police discovered that she had staged the incident. The police found evidence that James had indeed inflicted the injuries on Sherry, on her own accord, contradicting her claim that she hadn't seen him since their breakup years ago. Specifically, police claimed to have discovered that James had used a wooden object purchased from Hobby Lobby to brand Sherry. They also discovered that Sherry's broken nose was the result of self-inflicted injuries with a hockey stick. Despite this damning evidence, Sherry continued to deny any involvement in her disappearance. However, James provided the police with details about Sherry's disappearance that only someone with insider knowledge would know. Consequently, on March 3, 2022, Sherry was arrested by the FBI for lying to federal agents and faking her own abduction. 6 weeks later, she agreed to plead guilty to these charges as part of a plea deal with federal prosecutors. In the subsequent sentencing, Sherry's defense team requested a lenient sentence of 1 month in prison and 7 months of home detention. However, the prosecution recommended a more severe 18-month sentence. Ultimately, the court sentenced Sherry to 18 months in prison and ordered her to pay a $300,000 fine in September 2022, accepting the prosecution's recommendation. During her sentencing, the judge described she as manipulative and dishonest. At the sentencing hearing, Sherry apologized to those who had been affected by her actions and acknowledged her guilt. She took responsibility for her dishonesty and the harm it had caused to herself and others. Sherry was released from prison in August 2023 and placed in a halfway house. Her relationship with Keith ended on the day of her arrest in March 2022, when Keith learned the truth about her actions. Shortly after Sherry's guilty plea, Keith filed for divorce and sought full custody of their children. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Becky Bliefnick. Becky and Tim met while studying at Quincy University. Becky majored in biology and loved tennis. Tim was an excellent football player, popular in school. Those close to Tim commented that he was a cheerful, innocent, and friendly guy. Tim always greeted everyone with a warm hug. With an enthusiastic and friendly personality, Tim was very loved by his friends. On the other hand, Becky's friends described her as a cheerful person, capable of making the surrounding atmosphere bright and positive just by her presence. With her positive energy and bright smile, Becky easily made a good impression on everyone around her. Both Becky and Tim were attractive people, and they seemed to complement each other perfectly. The combination of attractive appearance and compatible personalities made them an ideal couple in the eyes of everyone. 2 years after graduating from Quincy University, Becky and Tim decided to get married and start a new phase in their lives. Being a practical couple, they prioritized saving money over spending. Instead of buying an engagement ring and planning a lavish honeymoon, they decided to use their savings to put a down payment on their first home. Becky had dreamed of becoming a doctor, but ultimately did not pursue this career. Although she loved medicine, Becky felt a stronger calling to motherhood. She longed to experience the joy and happiness of motherhood. This dream came true when she and her husband Tim had 3 sons. Becky loved spending quality time with her children and watching them grow up. As her children grew older, Becky decided to pursue her own dreams. She chose to go back to school to get her nursing degree. On the other hand, Tim has always been a performer, from his time in community theater in Quincy to creating comedic videos on social media. He has the ability to captivate audiences with his humor and charisma. In 2008, Tim decided to challenge himself by entering the competition American Gladiators. Although he did not make it to the final round, he tried his best and made it to the final audition round of the show. In September 2019, Tim took a new opportunity to attract attention and showcase his talent. The production team of the popular TV show Family Feud invited Tim and his family to participate. However, Becky could not join him because she was attending nursing school. Determined to make the most of the opportunity to participate in the show, Tim gathered his family, including his parents and brothers. Family Feud is a television game show where 2 families compete against each other by guessing the most popular answer from a survey of 100 people. Steve Harvey, the famous host of Family Feud, asked Tim, "What do you think is the most popular answer to the question, 'What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?'" Tim, known for his sense of humor, surprised Steve Harvey in the audience with his clever answer. He said, "Honey, I love you, but said I do." This statement was shocking and made the whole studio laugh. Although this answer was not expected, it still won second place on the leaderboard, earning Tim and his family many points. The Bliefnick family competed on Family Feud for 3 episodes, winning a total of $20,000. The prize money was divided equally among the family members. There was one notable exception, however. Tim did not share his reward with his wife, Becky. After many years of marriage, Becky and Tim's relationship began to strain. When Becky decided to become a nurse, Tim strongly objected. He said he was worried about Becky's health because nursing was often a high-stress job. Tim also noticed that Becky often had difficulty controlling her patience and stress when caring for the children. This made him worry about her ability to handle the job of a nurse. However, Becky's friends had a different view of Tim's reaction. They believed that Tim did not want Becky to be independent and free to pursue her own interests. Over time, they noticed that Becky was no longer as happy in the marriage as she had been before. Things were going well for the first 5 years, but then Tim began to act more controlling and manipulative towards Becky. Becky's friends noticed that while Becky was putting a lot of effort into her studies and nursing work, Tim was not contributing his fair share to the household chores. Tim did not participate in cleaning and taking care of their son. Instead, he left Becky to shoulder all the household chores after her long, tiring shifts at the hospital. Becky noticed that their marriage was struggling and wanted to work on this with Tim. She suggested that the two of them go to marriage counseling, hoping that this would help them improve the situation and mend their relationship. However, Tim refused this proposal, leaving Becky feeling disappointed. Although Becky tried her best to save their marriage, Tim had other intentions. In January 2012, after 11 years of marriage, Tim suddenly filed for divorce from Becky. This decision shocked Becky, as she had shown determination and effort to maintain the relationship. However, Tim's intentions were clear. He moved out of the house and into a new place on the other side of town. Tim explained that the main reason for his decision to divorce was due to the change in Becky's personality after she became a nurse. He found that her new career had significantly affected her behavior, causing a negative impact on their marriage. The divorce process was stressful. Tim and Becky could not find common ground and their relationship more deteriorated. During the divorce proceedings, Tim and Becky fought over a number of issues, including child custody, property division, and alimony. The situation became so tense that Tim filed for a protective order against Becky. He accused her of stalking and harassing him. Tim cited one specific incident. During a parent-teacher, Becky became aggressive and argued with him. As evidence, Tim provided a cell phone video of Becky banging on his car door outside the school after the conference. Becky, however, had a different view of the situation. She believed that Tim was the one who was harassing her. Becky texted her friends to share her concerns. In the messages, she described multiple instances of Tim's violent behavior, including yelling at her, pushing her in front of the children, and throwing things around the house. Becky sent a text message to a friend, expressing her deep concern about Tim's mental health. She noticed that Tim was becoming more hostile and unpredictable. Recently, a co-worker of Becky's was murdered by her partner, which made her even more fearful for her safety. Becky began to suspect that Tim might harm her, similar to what had happened to her co-worker. As a result, Becky sent a text message to her sister, saying that if anything happened to her, Tim would be the one to pay the most attention. Becky was worried that Tim would use force to gain custody of their child. This message made Becky's sister very worried about her sister's safety. She understood that Becky's fears were justified and that Becky needed immediate help. Out of concern for Becky's safety, her sister convinced her to seek help from the Domestic Violence Support Center. After some consideration, Becky decided to file for a protective order against Tim. After reviewing both Tim and Becky's requests for protective orders, the judge decided not to grant either of them. Instead, the judge ordered them to stay away from each other's homes, except to exchange custody of their children. On February 22, Becky and Tim's 3 sons, ages 12, 10, and 5, stayed overnight at Tim's house. Tim's house is about a mile from where Becky lives. The divorce proceedings between Becky and Tim are expected to be finalized within the next week. The next day, Tim called Becky's father. He explained that he had been unable to reach Becky and that she had not picked up her sons from school as usual. Becky's father, knowing that his daughter was devoted to her children, realized that something serious must have happened that had left Becky unable to perform her duties as a mother. Concerned about Becky's health, her father drove to her house immediately. When he arrived, he entered the house and walked through the rooms, calling Becky's name. Receiving no response, he went upstairs and entered his daughter's bedroom. Inside, he witnessed a horrifying scene: Becky lying motionless in a pool of blood, her body covered in gunshot wounds. Investigators arrived at Becky's house after her father discovered her body in the bathroom. Becky's body was lying on her back, covered in blood and showing no signs of life. Investigators began their investigation by thoroughly inspecting the exterior of the home. After a thorough search, they determined that the suspect had entered the home by forcing open an upstairs window in a child's bedroom. This discovery revealed that the suspect had used a porch chair to gain easy access to the home and onto the roof. Investigators followed the trail they believed the suspect had taken. They headed toward Becky's bedroom, where the door appeared to have been kicked in or forcefully broken. The damage to the bedroom door indicated that the suspect had entered the room, most likely to look for Becky. Evidence indicated that Becky attempted to hide in the bathroom, but the suspect followed and caught up with her. The suspect eventually shot Becky in the bathroom. While examining the crime scene around the bathroom where Becky's body was found, investigators stumbled upon her cell phone. When investigators examined Becky's phone, they found a call to 91126 at 1:11 a.m. This discovery helped them develop a theory about what happened that night. They believe that while being chased by the suspect in her home, Becky tried to call 911 for help, but in a panic, she mistakenly dialed 91126. Before Becky could call 911 again, investigators believe that the suspect grabbed the phone from her. The mistaken call occurred at 1:11 a.m., so they think Becky may have been murdered around that time. However, when police investigated Becky's neighborhood, no one remembered hearing any strange noises at that time. This raised suspicions for investigators. Since Becky had multiple gunshot wounds, it was unlikely that no one heard anything. When investigators thoroughly searched Becky's home, they quickly determined that the murder was not a burglary, as nothing was missing. However, the perpetrator left behind a number of important pieces of evidence. Most notably, a partial shoe print was found near the entrance. This shoe print could help identify the make and model of the suspect's shoes, as well as provide information about the size and shape of their feet. At the scene, investigators found 8 9mm bullet casings and several small pieces of plastic scattered on the floor near Becky's body. Despite the extensive evidence collected, investigators were still unable to come to a definitive conclusion. Therefore, they decided to send the collected evidence to a forensic lab for further analysis. Detectives are investigating whether any of Becky's neighbors had installed security cameras outside their homes. They discovered that a neighbor had installed a camera on the side of their house after their car was broken into a year ago. The camera was facing the neighbor's driveway, which bordered Becky's house. It was set up to detect motion and send an alert to the homeowner. However, on the night of Becky's death, the camera did not capture any important footage. As they investigated further, investigators discovered that on the day of the murder, a man was seen walking down the back path of Becky's house at 1:05 a.m. on the security camera footage. About 48 minutes later, the man was seen walking back in the opposite direction. Becky's neighbor's security camera also recorded a similar incident about a week earlier. On February 14th, footage from the neighbor's security camera showed Becky seeing a dark figure lurking around her house. After discovering this, Becky's neighbor immediately informed her of the news. After the neighbor reported the mysterious stranger, Becky began to feel anxious. Although she had not seen anyone on her house, she had heard noises in her backyard the night before, which frightened her. Police reviewed security camera footage from Becky's neighbors and continued to search the neighborhood for additional footage. They found video from a home near the Quiney bus stop that showed a bicyclist wearing dark clothing moving toward Becky's home. The videos showed a bicyclist wearing dark clothing, matching the description of the mystery person in the footage of Becky's driveway. After analyzing the time of the footage, detectives suspected that the bicyclist was the person in the footage. Although Becky's neighbor's security cameras did not capture the mystery person on the night of her murder, police did stumble upon footage of a bicyclist heading toward Becky's home shortly before and after the incident. The video footage showed a person matching the description of the person lurking in Becky's driveway before she was murdered. While the video was helpful to the investigation, the poor quality of the footage made it difficult to gather details. Detectives were unable to determine the gender or identity of the person in the video due to the graininess of the image. However, they did notice one important detail: the bicycle the person was riding appeared to have no reflectors on its wheels. When Becky was murdered, her sister immediately thought of Tim, Becky's soon-to-be ex-husband, as a possible suspect. She had witnessed their tense divorce and shared this thought with the detectives investigating the case. Based on this information, the police began to consider Tim as the prime suspect. Notably, the murder occurred just a week before Becky and Tim finalized their divorce, making the situation particularly suspicious. During the investigation of Becky's murder, investigators made an important discovery. They found a bicycle without reflectors on its wheels, similar to the one seen on the security camera, just a block away from Tim's house. This discovery raised suspicions about Tim, prompting detectives to seek a search warrant for his home. When police executed the search warrant, Tim was cooperative and respectful. He willingly stood outside the home with the officers while investigators searched his property. On March 13, 2023, Tim was arrested and charged with Becky's murder 2 weeks earlier. When Tim's mugshot was released, Becky's family and friends were shocked by his appearance. Instead of the well-groomed man they knew, they saw a completely different Tim, unkempt and seemingly frail. Many believe that this change reflected the negative impact that the divorce had had on Tim. His unkempt hair and shabby clothes were a clear sign of the deterioration in his previously well-groomed appearance. The divorce was blamed for Tim's declining physical and mental health, according to friends and family. However, Tim explained that he had grown his hair long to take part in a charity campaign to raise awareness for cancer research. A clip from the Family Feud show in which Tim said he wished he had not married his wife when he was arrested for murdering her caused a stir. Many people saw this reaction as an uncanny sign of Tim's true feelings for his wife. Some even suggested it was a warning sign of potential problems in their relationship. Investigators carefully examined Tim's phone and discovered that he had created a fake Facebook account under the name John Smith. During the investigation, they discovered that Tim had been looking to buy a bicycle on Facebook. He was particularly interested in a blue Schwinn without reflectors on the wheels. This was notable because it matched the description of the bike found abandoned near Tim's home, just a block away. Despite the overwhelming evidence against Tim, convicting him was difficult. Tim was held without bail and ordered a speedy trial, requiring the prosecution to bring the case to trial within 90 days of his arrest. However, the prosecution faced a major challenge in convincing a jury of Tim's guilt due to the lack of two key elements that are often considered decisive in criminal cases: a confession and DNA evidence. Without these two elements, proving Tim's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt became very difficult. In prosecuting Tim for his wife's murder, the prosecution faced a major challenge. 3 months after Becky was murdered in their home, Tim appeared in court on May 23, 2023. During the trial, the state presented evidence that investigators had collected at the scene. A key piece of evidence was the plastic debris found around Becky's body. The prosecution claimed that it was from an Aldi grocery bag. They also told the jury that several similar bags were found during a subsequent search of Tim's home. The prosecution alleged that Tim used the Aldi plastic bag as a silencer when he shot his ex-wife multiple times, in order to muffle the sound of the gunfire and avoid detection. They claimed that Tim left DNA on the bags. An expert who testified said it was highly likely that the DNA found on the bags belonged to Tim. Prosecutors presented evidence to the jury about a crowbar found in Tim's basement that they believed could have been used to pry open a window at the victim's home on the night of her murder. However, an expert testified that although there were some slight similarities between the marks on the window and the crowbar, she could not say for certain that the crowbar was used in the crime. The prosecution presented several new pieces of evidence to bolster its case. They presented searches that Tim had conducted on his phone, including how to open a door with a crowbar, how to make a silencer for a homemade pistol, how to clean gunpowder off his hands, and the average response time for Quincy police. An expert was called to testify that she had compared the shell casings found at the crime scene to the shell casings found in Tim's home. She determined that 27 of the shell casings from Tim's home were fired from the same 9mm weapon used in the murder. When investigators searched Tim's home, they did not find Becky's 9mm gun. Tim claimed that he had not seen the gun for months before Becky was killed. During the trial, the defense did not call any witnesses. After a 6-day trial, the jury deliberated for 4 hours before finding Tim guilty. Ultimately, Tim was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Although Tim maintained his innocence and planned to appeal, Becky's family believed the sentence was deserved. Becky's sister spoke to Tim about the consequences of his actions on his sons, emphasizing that his choices had caused them pain. Even though Becky is gone, her sister promises to keep her memory alive in the hearts of her 3 sons.